Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about What If Deku was Society's Rebel Part 1. If you guys enjoy this What If and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗧𝗵𝗃 from fanfiction. So let's start the video. Chapter 1. Things in the Hero Society of Japan has had some events of high significance, to say the least, in ways that have begun to put heroes to the test, as well the students training to become heroes themselves from the country's highest regarded academy for heroics, UA. The most recent incident took place in Hosu on the night where pro-heroes have finally captured the infamous hero killer, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, all while defending the city with their interns against an army of the bioweapons known as 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲, produced by the recently revealed League of Villains. Before he was last seen, however, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 had managed to reveal the extent of his conviction to the public eye, creating a shift in its opinion of heroes in general, even gave a rise in the opposing forces, much to the benefit of the League. What followed afterwards may have had a similar impact on the society that surrounds the heroes. A few days after that memorable night, a video had been trending throughout social media. It was simply that of a teenage boy giving a speech in front of camera, in a darkened setting that provides no indications to his location or surroundings. The boy in the video was Izuku Midoriya, a student of UA who had gained some popularity after coming in first place at this year's sports festival, although not all of it in a positive sense. Circumstances surrounding him have added to the interest of that topic, such as the fact that he was a student under the support course, not the hero course that many had expected to win. He was also the same non-hero student who got caught in the villain attack alongside Class 1A, getting severely injured that he ended up with a robotic arm to replace the one he had lost. Being a support course student meant that he was allowed the use of support gears at the festival, which he used solely during the whole event, raising the question of what his quirk is. The answer came from one of the hero course students he had faced, shouting it as loud as the explosions he could produce. He was quirkless. A truth Midoriya feared would overshadow what was known about him. Despite that, he still made it to the top, defeating that student after a hard battle against his explosions and others with powerful quirks, including a son of the number 2 hero. In the video, Midoriya was giving a description of himself and the life he had, the main focus being his lifelong dream of becoming a hero, as well as the difficulties from living as a quirkless individual. Any of the viewers who had some connection to him already had a general idea of this subject, but never heard Midoriya speak about it with as much of his mind and emotions as he was putting into. Even his own mother was learning some things for the first time, as her son spared no details to what he had been through, such as those who have willfully contributed to his hardships, with Katsuki Bakugo as one name above all. Midoriya mentions that in his pursuit to becoming a hero, he entered the support course in the hopes that his own expertise would benefit him in his hero career, making up for his lack of a quirk. From there, he would apply for the transfer exam into the hero course after proving himself through the sports festival, which had been his goal from the start. On the first day back, Midoriya was called into an early meeting with the homeroom teacher of Class 1A to discuss about the transfer exam. Given the overall mood that's been displayed, it was easy to guess how that turned out. The teacher had denied him any chance to partake in the exam, for reasons concerning the nature of his performance. More specifically, his pure reliance of support gears, something that the teacher saw as unbefitting of a hero. The rest of the meeting went on with Izuku desperately trying to defend his argument against the teacher's decision, but to no avail. Aizawa asked why this was so important to me. I told him everything, and he said that if I really wanted to help people, then it wouldn't have mattered how I did it. I would have accepted whatever options were available to me and focused on what was best. Going about it the way I was, trying to become a hero, even if it's just to prove a point, to change society's view on those who live their lives in discrimination for their quirks, or lack of one, was not the best option for me. Because no matter how noble the cause, it means little if it leads to unnecessary risk, and being a hero comes with too great a risk for people like me. He pauses for a moment. Then he reassured me that the other reason for this was that I was already on my way to a much more stable future. I could be something greater than a hero. With my talents, I could become a key figure in the support industry, someone that doesn't just support and improve heroes, but build the hero world itself. I could even create my own company and live a rich and comfortable life. I thought about what he told me on my way to class. about the future that I could have. Used it to cheer myself up from being denied my last chance towards my dream, until I had the resolve to pursue that instead. It didn't take long to find out how it was all in vain. People don't pay as much attention, but support students also have internships following the sports festival, receiving offers to work at support companies. From my own display, everyone believed that I was guaranteed the highest number of offers. Yet somehow, his speech broke for a moment before he could finish what he was going to say. Somehow, after everything I had accomplished, I turned out to be the only one in my class who didn't get a single offer. He averts his eyes from the camera and pauses for a few seconds. I shouldn't have been so surprised about the offers or anything else after the sports festival. It doesn't matter if I'm top of my class or if I demonstrate my support gear against powerful quirk users and actually defeat them. Without a quirk of my own, I'm nothing more to society than a quirkless outcast, desperately trying to be anything else and causing problems for others as a result. That's exactly what the media portrays me as when they're not targeting UA for its hero students losing to a quirkless nobody. That's what Aizawa based his decision on without second thought, thinking that I'd just be a liability. And that's what the support industry looked towards if I had a quirk to back up the skills I put into my inventions. Quirkless, quirkless, quirkless. Nothing more in the eyes of society, no matter what I do. He took a moment to calm himself from his rising emotions before going on. I really believed things could change, that I was on my way to finally make a difference and put it all behind me. But nothing's changed. All that work, and I just end up back where I started, with all my effort used to belittle me even more. Another moment of pause before continuing. So what now? How do I move forward from all of this? What more can I do that isn't going to produce the same outcome, that's going to give me assurance that I won't die out in poverty for society's prejudice? I asked myself those questions and I ended up with the last two options I have left. The first was that I'd force the changes that society wouldn't accept. Something nearly impossible to do without being labeled a villain, in which case I'd just earn another label of outcast. That leaves me with the other option. The one I had especially tried to avoid, until I knew there was nothing left for me. Izuku leans in towards the camera as he was reaching to grab something on the side. What was revealed in his robotic hand was something to put all viewers at the edge of their seats. A handgun. The sound of a gunshot jolts him awake. A brief look at his surrounding reveals the interior of a train cart, reminding him that he was currently riding said train, helping Aizawa to realize he had simply woken from a nightmare. He calms himself down and turns to his thoughts on the experience. Of course that would get to me on this exact night. And, of course, I'm going to have to fight it down until after the mission. Tonight marks exactly 4 years since the tragic loss of Izuku Midoriya. For Aizawa, it was the source of the greatest of guilts he's had to carry, for what he couldn't avoid seeing as a potential consequence of his own action, an action he'd never think twice on and one meant to have produced the opposite of what had transpired. As a teacher for a class of would-be heroes, his first priority was to weed out the students that didn't measure up or were held back in some way, those that would be the most prone to an outcome he discovered much too early to be the worst that could happen to any hero on the field. Midoriya was a unique case, but no exception as far as Aizawa was concerned. He rejected the desperate dream of an emotionally scared teen too willing to put himself at fatal risk, so that he could be left with only a safe path towards greater success. That's all there was to his decision. What he hadn't anticipated was society holding on to its irrational tendencies, enough that he'd still end up being treated for his quirkless status over his unprecedented success in the sports festival. From the media that made a mockery of his hard work, to the support industry that looked past someone they should have fought to have working for them. No matter how he sees it, Aizawa is as much to blame as any of them. If not for the fact that he blindly trusted the support industry to pick Midoriya up from where he left him, then for the knowledge that the single thing separating him from those people was a difference in viewpoint to the same motivation for how to handle Midoriya. This meant to him above all else having a part in a senseless waste of a student's life, when that student was robbed of any hope of a future worth living. Aizawa did what he could to move on from the lives that couldn't be saved, as any hero is expected to, causing an inner conflict between the effort and the guilt that he's had to live with since. There have been times when something would bring up the past, much to his remorse, and others where he has to keep it in the back of his mind for the sake of the job. Tonight is likely going to be an occasion for both. The train makes an overhead announcement of its approaching stop in Hosu City, reminding him of the mission that was bringing him there. "I can sulk over Midoriya tomorrow. Time to go to work." Aizawa exits the train at his destination. As soon as he does, he pulls out his phone and opens up an app he recently downloaded. It served as an exclusive invitation to an underground event taking place somewhere in the city tonight. Aizawa was one of the heroes selected to attend it, under the cover of civilian spectators, as part of a mission to apprehend a high-profile target that was orchestrating the event. The app shows a timer to when the event starts, and within a few minutes, reveal the exact location. The latter eventually came in the form of a GPS to his destination. It looked to be within walking distance, so Aizawa made his way there. His journey brought him to an abandoned factory in the city's industrial zone. When he gets to a certain distance of the building, the app shows him where to find the entrance on a side of it that had some element of discretion. A hidden door opened itself as he unknowingly approached it, taking it as a sign to just walk right in. In another building across from the factory, someone was peeking from a window to see Aizawa walking in. "Eraserhead has entered the building. That's the last of them," he announces on a communication device. Somewhere in the area was a large vehicle parked in a position that was out of sight from the factory. Inside of it was a tactical team of law enforcers. "Copy that." The police captain amongst them responds. He then makes an announcement to the other men and everyone listening on their communication channel. "Everyone listen up. The initial strike team are all in place. A reminder of the plan: as soon they make a move on the enemy leader and his followers, we back them up. Team 1 goes in to provide support, while Team 2 remains outside to prevent any escape attempts. The preferred timeframe is when the event ends and all civilians have vacated the building, otherwise they're forced to act prematurely, and we deal with crowd control along the way. Acknowledge if you got all that. Manual here." "Understood. This is native. Read you loud and clear." The captain has received a response from all of the other units surrounding the area, consisting of more laws enforcers and local heroes assigned to the task. He turns to a computer screen to see the countdown for a live video feed of the event, from a public website belonging to the ones who organized the whole thing. Despite any attempts to remove it from public access, it has only proven to be both untouchable and untraceable in the digital world. All of a sudden, a noise was emitting from his communication device, making him look back towards it with confusion. He then realizes that it wasn't the only source of the sound. It was coming from all of the devices that everyone had on them. The first thought that came to the captain's mind was that their channel was compromised and that the enemy was aware of their presence. Before he could react to that knowledge, he felt a sensation of fading consciousness, which he'd eventually succumb to, and everyone else that was hearing it. A feminine figure was coming out from a state of invisibility outside of the vehicle, revealing someone dressed in a white full-body outfit, with a hood over a high-tech helmet that has a red visor. On the individual's left breast was a symbol depicted in black, in the shape of a right hand on its backside, with the left half of it looking like its skeletal structure was exposed, only that it appeared to be more mechanical in design. The figure was looking at the vehicle through a digital display produced by the helmet. It includes an outline of the people inside, almost as if they could be seen through walls, as well as a feature that showed their vital readings to determine that they were all unconscious. She looks around to see the outlines of the other law enforcers and pro-heroes from greater distances, seeing that they ended up in the same state. "A successful strike. Everyone outside has been put down, boss," she states out loud, with a voice that was made to sound mechanical. A group of people were gathered in a dark, large spaced room. The only sources of light were from the eyes of each of their mechanical helmets, as well as from a holographic screen projected in midair, showing a camera feed of the gathered audience. One of them was standing in front of it, looking at a select few amongst the rest that the image had focused on. "Good work, Banshee. You know what to do next." He instructs her further, revealing a mechanized voice of his own. "Already on it." She responds over their own channel. "They really couldn't resist coming here, huh?" Another one of them asks out loud, while also looking at the feed from just behind the one in front. "More like they couldn't afford to, considering the support we already have up to now. Things are going to become much more difficult for the heroes after our success tonight. Something these 6 will unfortunately be learning the hard way." Aizawa had integrated with the audience inside the factory. There was a stage at one end of the building that everyone was facing. It had a banner on each side with the half-exposed hand that's been advertised as the symbol of those that are orchestrating the whole thing. Above the stage was a holographic countdown to the start of the event. He couldn't help overhearing the various conversations of those around him during the wait. One topic of discussion was in the relationship of Hosu City as the setting, with its history in regards to Stain's influence. Aizawa speculates that it was a way to subliminally associate their ideals as something similar to that of the hero killer, using a sense of nostalgia in their gain of public support. He doesn't give much interest on the subject, but it brings up something he was thinking of earlier. The fact that tonight was also the anniversary of Midoriya's death, which a part of him wishes that others would realize it for themselves, if only to keep his memory alive. This had also brought back the feelings he tried to hold down, now having to do it again, until the timer over the stage reaches 0. Here we go. Immediately the lights go off, with the exception of the ones over the stage, where a row of individuals could be seen slowly emerging from beneath. Their attires each had a unique appearances, with their own colors and designs, but had some similarities between them, like how they covered their whole bodies, concealing their identities, while also having some pieces that looked to be mechanical. One thing that stood out for Aizawa was the height for some of them, bringing up curiosity for their age. The middle figure was the most interesting out of all of them, the one believed to be the leader of the group. His costume is a black jumpsuit with green linings. It had some metallic components that consisted of a full facial helmet with glowing eyes, gauntlets, boots, shoulder pads, and a belt that had a half cape underneath it covering the back of his legs, as well as their symbol placed on the middle point. The audience began to cheer loudly upon their appearance. The leader moves up front, then in a stunning display, a giant holographic duplicate of his upper body comes to light above him. Earning him more cheers, he attempts to calm by raising his arm, his hologram mirroring his action. The cheering eventually dies down, and he begins with his opening statement. Men are not created equally. His mechanical voice filled the room, no doubt enhanced to match the size of his duplicate. In this world, there cannot be victors without the defeated, the strong without the weak. Those above that prosper without those beneath that struggle. But even while in the face of this unavoidable truth, there was a time when mankind strove for equality, in the only way it could be achieved. An equality of opportunity, where everyone is given a chance to determine their own place in the world through their own efforts and abilities. The audience gave more of their cheers. Then came a great occurrence that changed everything. Something too big for the world to not have focused its attention on and later revolve around. The existence of quirks. This prompted everyone to shout out aggressively to that reveal. Make no mistake, quirks are indeed a gift to the world and should be seen as such, but it is not a gift without fault, more specifically in its effects on the ways of society. We now live in a world where the power and uniqueness of one's quirk is the sole measure of whoever possesses it, dictating one's place in it at birth by a genetic lottery. A world that sees it naturally justified for one standard of people, those with strong and flashy quirks, to openly look down and discriminate on everyone else that doesn't compare to them. Everyone whose quirks are deemed weak or useless. Who are considered inhuman for their mutated appearances. Who posse's quirks described as villainous and are no better off. Worst yet, are those who have no value in the eyes of society for their complete lack of a quirk, emphasized by the idea of them being powerless to do anything. The audience gave shouts of agreement with strong hints of disdain to those facts. All of this beyond the control of anyone, yet still a cause for prejudice, in a society that would only expect us to conform at the convenience of those in power. Anyone who steps out of line, regardless of reason or intent, easily falls under the broad term of villains, to be condemned and targeted by that same society. More of the audience's scorn had been expressed at that revelation. That's where the pro-heroes come in. Always there to save the day with the fall of the villains. Always preserved in an image as our noble protectors who could do no wrong, not the ideal enforcers of those that dictate their existence. The kind that the masses are blinded towards with worship for the strength of their quirks and whatever deeds that come from simply using those quirks, whether it's for the ones that have truly earned the title, or the ones who use it just to abuse their quirks for fame and fortune. They may put their own lives on the line to defend all others, but that has always meant defending society's order above all else, and never questioning the legitimacy of that order in all its negative effects, or at least refuse to act upon it. They'd simply write it off as a lesser evil they consider acceptable for the sake of stability, enabling the infliction of hardships on some more than others and leave everyone to their fates. The audience gave another uproar to the statement of facts, much louder than any previous occasion. The leader had calmed them down before he could continue. All the while, Aizawa was making note of his ability to stir up large crowds of people, an attribute he considered to be worrisome for the enemy to posses. I am not the first to speak out, nor am I the first to challenge it with some offer or guarantee of a way to fix the problem. I would think, however, that mine is a way to even the playing field. This gave everyone a sense that this speech was reaching a part with high significance. Like many who endure today's world, I looked to improve my status in whatever way I could think of. For most of my life, that meant following my childhood dream into becoming a hero myself, despite the ridicule people threw at me for pursuing that dream without a quirk that's of any use, let alone suited for heroics. That was when Aizawa started to suspect the direction of his wording, given the familiarity of what he was hearing to something he knows quite well. I decided that if I couldn't rely on a quirk, then I would look for an alternative. The obvious answer was support gears, so I'd first study to produce my own equipment. The perspective I'd gained from that field helped me to come up with two important realizations that have given me more than what I had sought. People in the audience waited to hear what they were. Aizawa was more focused on the backstory he just heard, and he was suspecting more of a possibility he holds with scorn. If I find out this guy is exploiting Midoriya's past for his own benefit, I'll make him regret it. The first is a particular symptom of a quirk-driven society. It was once said that if quirks never existed, people would be taking interstellar vacations by now. A testament to the fact that human progress had drastically stalled from the chaos of when quirks first emerged. Whatever advancements that came since has been monopolized by the hero industry. People in the audience began to converse on how they've either heard something like this before, or how it sounds plausible hearing it now. The other was the potential in technology. A potential to become a superpower in its own right. One that could be equal to quirks, if not greater, and everything that quirks are not. Controllable, adaptable, and most important of all, accessible beyond genetics. The audience conversed more on that idea with great interest, the existence of a power in their world other than a quirk. I developed the resources and the means to advance technology into that power, in a design centered on cybernetics, to be combined into me as my very own, no different than the relationship between a quirk and its user. He raises an arm in front of him. The metal surrounding that arm appears to have turned into a liquid state that allowed it to retract itself within the limb. There was only a glove now on the hand that he removes to reveal the flesh. A slit is made on the palm, and through it comes out more liquid metal. Its shape alternates shifts into a solid state to take the form of multiple complex devices, such as tools, accessories, and weapons, while adding in metal from the other arm in the act to show a little versatility. This succeeded in raising some awe in the audience. The last device was an advanced-looking drone that was commanded to fly around in the air. It eventually drops back to the arm, turning into liquid in midair, and reforms into the gauntlet. The next step was to introduce and demonstrate what I had created to society, a new form of power that would coexist alongside quirks, acting as an equalizer that makes up where quirks have denied. In turn, the idea of quirks being the absolute would deteriorate, and with it, all quirk-based discrimination. To that end, I set out to compare the efficiency of my cybernetics to the pro heroes as a vigilante. I found others along the way who believe in the changes I'm fighting for, and provided cybernetics to each of them so that they too may take part in that fight. He points to the others on stage with him, his devoted followers who have also shown to have the technological abilities of their leader. Now I'm looking for many more who would wish to join us, expanding my team of vigilantes into an army that will spread our influence throughout the country, as what the people will come to know as the Cyber Front. Everyone reacted with more cheering at the offer to join the cause, already throwing in their passion and their willingness to do so. All of our actions will be portrayed as vigilantism in every attempt to suppress our movement, and the heroes will do everything they can to stop us for the mindless protection of a society that could never care for our struggles. Their cheering had quickly turned back to disapproval upon that statement. None of that will matter in the end. After we outperform the heroes in their own field and win over public favor to our side, it will be so that we'd meet a specific goal to put those changes in play. A short moment of anticipation had passed before said goal would be elaborated with a simple sentence: eliminating the heroes by taking their place. Aizawa was shocked at that revelation. Despite all that was said thus far, he hadn't imagined such a unique and original end goal for an organization aiming to make some anti-hero movement. From what I can tell, he's someone who can think ahead and organize well enough to follow through with what he says. We don't catch him tonight, he'll give us hell trying catching him and followers down the road. We will become everything they are and should be, only our role won't be limited in service to the public, but in its embetterment as well. Just as pro-heroes represent the height of quirk usage in this quirk-obsessed world, we will represent the balance between quirks and cybernetics that will free us of today's discriminations. Our technology will then help to advance the rest of society to a future it was deprived of, and we may reach for the stars yet. That is my promise to the people of Japan as the head of the cyber front, as the cyber vigilante Augment. His statement was met with the audience giving its cheering at its loudest and most spirited, everyone within it filled with enthusiasm and high hopes for the promised future. He's had to settle the audience down once more before going on. And now for a special presentation. If you'll turn to the floor, the ground beneath the audience disappears, revealing some space under their feet. The initial shock fades from the complete lack of falling down, indicating that there's still a floor to prevent it. What you're seeing is a visual of the room directly underneath this one, where in a few short moments, I will further demonstrate the power of our cybernetics with the help of some special guests, the 6 pesky heroes who believe they've snuck their way in here. Aizawa's brain went to full alert. The enemy just stated his awareness of their presence. Before he could react to that revelation, something unexpected happened right after. While everyone around him looked like they were standing on air, his body fell into the room below. The only thing keeping him from landing painfully was a net that broke his fall, opening at the base and retracting itself once he reached the ground. He looks up at the hole in the ceiling from where he fell, seeing it close itself like it was fluid. He wasn't alone. There were 5 others in the room with him, recognizing each of them as the other pro-heroes partaking in his mission, looking just as surprised and alert as he was for being brought here in the same manner. 2 of them were former students of his, Denki Kaminari and Hitoshi Shinso, now pro-heroes 𝗪𝗓 and Mind Blank. Another one of them was the number 7 hero 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻, without his helmet as part of his cover. The remaining 2 were the magnet hero, Polar Force, and the tech hero 𝗃𝗃𝗄𝐻. Crap, we've been blown. Denki points out. We need to call for backup. Polar Force states. Aizawa goes ahead and calls for the support team on his earpiece. This is Eraserhead. They know we're here. No response. Do you copy? Is anyone listening? That won't do you any good. A voice gets the attention of all the heroes, mostly because of its familiarity. Walking casually towards the heroes was the vigilante leader they were here to capture, who has already proven to be a step ahead of them. Apologies for the drop-in. It was the best way to clear the room for what's to come. Augment explains. And what would that be, if you don't mind my asking? Hitoshi purposely responds before anyone else. For one thing, a demonstration that each of your quirks, while well chosen against someone like me, won't have any of the desired effect. That I'm still talking after responding to you is evident of that fact. Mind blank. Augment's answers. Hitoshi's eyes widened from hearing something that was true. If his quirk did take effect, his target would have stopped mid-sentence as a sign that he's caught in his control. And judging by your facial expressions, you too are realizing that for yourselves. You, Polar Force, can't seem to hold me with your magnet quirk, while you 𝗃𝗃𝗄𝗄 might sense the technology in me but haven't been able to control it. The 2 heroes he was addressing had nothing to say when they were called out on their own inabilities to suppress the enemy with their quirks. Oh, and Eraserhead, I'd advise you not to waste your quirk. You'll only get dry eye for nothing. So that's your play. Everyone turns to Aizawa before he speaks further. You saw us coming, heroes best suited to capture and counteract your tech, and you decided to take us on to show more of it. An effective plan for what you're trying to achieve. I just hope you're not so arrogant as to think you've already won, when we're all still capable of taking you on. Not to mention that one of us is in the top 10. Make this easy on yourself and surrender peacefully. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝐻 adds as a leverage. To confirm his statement, A layer of wood grows around his head into his signature helmet, and has allowed the wood from his arms to extend out of the sleeves that concealed them. Augment gives a small chuckle. If it wouldn't defeat the purpose of why I allowed you to make it this far, I'd return your offer of surrender. Also, one of you being in the top 10 is a bonus to me, not something to be intimidated over. He retorts to the heroes. This is happening regardless of what is said and done, but let me make something clear first. I stand by everything I have said, in the nature of the path I'm setting out, as well as that of the opposition. My goal is for a better society and the benefit of those suffering as things are, and whatever you believe drives you to get in my way, it is nothing more than the current society desperately clinging to its existence for its own interest, using you and every other hero as the unwitting pawns you always have been. Augment explains. The heroes took it as the vigilante's refusal to back down, as well as the insult it was made out to be, prompting them to expect the incoming conflict. That aside, I realize that many heroes have now gained a more personal motive for my capture after declaring the cyber front as your replacement. You would see it as an attack on your careers, and to some extent, an attack on the society that depends on you, which will then be used to argue against our movement. Here's another interpretation. In place of you heroes, we offer to society something that's more efficient in a number of ways. That includes being more open to anyone wanting to earn their place in it, beyond the limitations of quirks. All former heroes at that point will be welcome to partake in what will essentially be the same role and duties. But why wait for then when they can join now and help make it sooner? I'd ask any of you right now if you'd be interested in switching sides, but again that would defeat the purpose of why you're here. I have a question. Hitoshi gets the vigilante's attention. This isn't another trick. I just really want to know something. He assures him. Augment nods his head to let him carry on. You said you wanted to be a hero. What stopped you? Hitoshi asks, then elaborates. I mean, I can understand if it's something to do with the whole heroes being part of the problem, but don't you think you could have done a better job if you'd actually become one? Make the changes from within rather than against. Would have spared a lot of trouble for everyone. You say that like the choice was entirely my own. Augment answers. The ones listening had something of an impression that it was personal in the way it was expressed. All I will tell you is that the experience is what finally revealed to me, as you put it, heroes being part of the problem. So making the changes against is the more meaningful way to go about it and well worth the effort, especially when said trouble will be more for the heroes than anyone else. He adds, getting no more word on the subject. Any other questions before we get to it? The vigilante inquires. No response for a few seconds, until Aizawa throws in one. Do you believe that what you're doing is truly for the greater good? The other heroes got curious for an answer to that, and waited to hear one. I would think that a man of rationality such as yourself wouldn't have asked that, Augment remarks. Either way, there'll be plenty of time to dead in the near future. Tonight serves as a test of ability, so I say we let the results speak for themselves. Augment responds. Aizawa lets a few pellets slip down into his hand from within his sleeve. He quickly throws them at the feet of the vigilante, and upon impact, unleash a thick blinding smoke that envelopes the vigilante. He looks to 𝗏𝗏𝗏, who quickly nods his head in recognition of the initiated tactic. He activates the support gears on his feet, using electricity from his quirk to generate a repelling magnetic force between the ground and the soles of his feet that allow him to move with enhanced speed. He maneuvers around the smoke to the opposite side and then heads right into it. Sparks of electricity came flying out from within the smoke, emitting a light that outlined a shadow of the two inside. The electricity ceased and the smoke cleared, revealing Augment standing still with 𝗏𝗏𝗏 having his arms wrapped around him from behind. Trying to electrocute me or overload me? He simply asks. This gave the hero behind him immediate panic, as it showed his opponent to be unaffected by that attack. He quickly activates his support gear again to move away from him. At the same time, Augment rotates his body with his left arm extended in an attempt to grab hold of the hero, successfully doing so with one of his arms. Both the hero's backward momentum and the tug from the vigilante's grip had caused his body to flare up in the air. In a split second, Augment looked at the hero with a calculated display of how to execute his next move. That came in the form of a high kick delivered across 𝗏𝗏𝗏's head while still in the air, with enough force knock him sideways across the room and left unconscious on the floor. Sorry, Denki. His personal thoughts gave him a small sense of regret for harming someone he knew. Though he wasn't facing any of the other heroes, he was fully aware when one of them took advantage of it. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 had pulled himself towards the ceiling through the use of his quirk, from where he attempted an assault from above. In his descent, he aims both his arms to the vigilante to bind him with his extending wooden limbs. The metal in the palm of Augment's left gauntlet morphed to create a small device he was now holding. He tossed it over his shoulder at the hero, precisely between his arms, and when it was near him, it unleashed a force that pushed his arms away from each other, which gave him room to continue his fall. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 could only stare at his foe with wide eyes as he fell closer to him, who swiftly turned to give him an open palm uppercut under his chin at the right moment, the impact of which caused his body to flip backwards. Following this was the vigilante grabbing his leg as it got close to the hand that struck him, and then quickly turning to slam all of the hero's body to the ground. "You I'm not sorry for." Again, one of the heroes thought they could catch him off guard from behind. Augment rapidly bends down and has his whole body sliding backwards, passing under a large strip of metal flying at him. He straightens up to face the magnet hero that attempted to ensnare him. Polar Force continued to shoot his strips of metal he had concealed towards Augment, who kept evading each one with ease as he closed the distance between himself and his next opponent. Polar Force remained still after firing his projectiles, doing his best to not have his foe alerted from the fact that they're still controlled by him and that they've been redirected to approach him from behind. Another attempt in vain, seeing as how Augment managed to jump at an exact moment that allowed him to plant a foot on the highest strip so that it would carry him for a short distance and then jump up above the hero, landing behind him. The hero swung around to slash attack the vigilante with one of his strips. The vigilante dodged by delivering a leg sweep that removed both of the hero's feet from the ground, followed by positioning himself to be right under him, his body upside down so that when extends upwards, his feet kicks the magnet hero higher into the air. His next move was to join the hero in the ascent by jumping towards him with an arm out. Before he could make contact, something wrapped itself around Augment's torso and other arm that stopped him from getting any higher. It was the capture tape that was signatured to the erasure hero, who swings the vigilante back down. It took little effort for Augment to ensure that his free arm touches the ground first, immediately springing himself to land on his feet, then makes a move towards the eraser hero while still tied up. Just as he got right in his front to deliver a punch, Eraserhead called upon on his skills to not only evade the attack by flipping over the vigilante, but further utilized his capture tape as he caught the free arm with it during the evasion. Eraserhead kneels down and pulls on Augment's remaining arm over his shoulder with enough force that it put him onto the hero's back, his feet removed from the ground so they too would be tied up together by another strand of capture tape coming from the other underground hero trained in its use. Got him. Mind Blank informs. Eraserhead moves forwards to gain some distance and tighten the grip on the vigilante. Both heroes were now pulling on their opponent from both ends to keep him suspended in the air. Now, while they had him restrained, the tech hero took a small device and threw it to slide under the vigilante. Once in place, he used his quirk to activate it, but to no response. "One of your miniature EMP bombs, 𝗃𝗃𝗄?" Augment asks casually whilst he allowed himself to remain in this position. "What are you waiting for?" Mind Blank shouts with agitation. It's not going of. I don't know why. Simple. While you tried to take over my tech, I returned the favor and succeeded. Augment provides him the answers. The metal gauntlet of the arm that was caught has turned to liquid so that it could shift out of the hold of the capture tape. Augment swings his now freed arm, which rotates his body to face floor, smacking the EMP device in the process that it ended up near the feet of the hero it belonged to. With a mental command from the vigilante, the EMP goes off and unleashes a blast of energy that the tech hero was caught in. The two underground heroes couldn't help diverting their eyes to the bright display of the blast that their comrade helplessly flailed against in a desperate attempt to protect himself. This kind of distraction is what Augment had expected for him to exploit. From his free arm, he shoots a grappling cable aimed at Eraserhead's neck and wraps itself around it without fail. He retracts the cable to bring the hero to him in an unavoidable pull, while also using that same force to straighten himself and stand on his feet again, yet still in bondage. The hero could only stare at the vigilante as his neck found its way to the iron grip of his hand. He did what he could to escape, including throwing some attacks that his captor simply took with no reaction until Augment had forced him to his knees. This provoked Mind Blank to act in his former teacher's defense, rushing towards the vigilante from behind. What he didn't know was that the enemy expected something like that. Augment delivers a backwards kick to the incoming hero, after freeing his leg in the same manner as he did with his arm earlier, causing said hero to step back in pain. The next thing Mind Blank knew was seeing Eraserhead's body flying right at him, colliding with his own and being pushed back. Augment removes all of the capture tape around him. He turns to the tech hero and slowly approaches him, gaining his attention away from seeing his colleagues handled the way they were, keeping the shocked expression on his face. For the record, I have a defense for everything used against technology, including EMPs, so it wouldn't have mattered if I did get caught in that. The hero stares at him for a few short moments before his emotions got him to act rashly by throwing a desperate punch. The result was getting knocked out by a faster attack that was returned to him. The battle is over. You should know that best of all. Augment turns to the one he was referring to, seeing a wounded Eraserhead having some difficulty standing up. His response was to continue the battle as he rushed at the vigilante, with both fists aimed at him, one directed at his head to draw away attention to the other as it delivers a more inconspicuous strike. It was the latter that the target grabbed hold of while swiftly maneuvering around the hero and locks his arm behind his back. He then lifts Eraserhead in a manner where his own weight is applied on the arm lock, keeping him in that position as a way to show his victory to the audience watching from above. There's no sense in prolonging this. I've more than proven that the six of you cannot defeat me. I've even held back by barely bringing out any gadgetry. All you can do now is to surrender, which I am now offering. Augment tries to talk the remaining hero into compliance. I'm not in any position to do that. Even if you are obviously stronger, I can't just let you go free to ruin the lives of those you turn into outlaws, just to outshine heroes with their lives on the line, noble cause or otherwise. And this isn't me being society's pawn. Say what you will about heroes, but as one myself, I'm only looking out for the innocent. Eraserhead strongly argues while flailing in the position he was in the same way that you once did for Izuku Midoriya? Hearing that name had made Eraserhead stop immediately his resistance and leave him speechless. It confirmed his previous suspicion on there being a connection to him, in a way intended to use against him. I make it my business to know certain histories of whatever heroes they're tied to, so of course a prime example like him would be kept in my mind. What you denied him is exactly what I offer to my followers, a chance to elevate themselves from living their lives in subjugation and oppression, with protection from you heroes as an excuse to keep things as they are. And let's not forget that they'll be provided the same means that have granted me victory tonight. They won't be as weak or helpless against either heroes or villains as you must have thought Midoriya to be when you made your decision for him. What the hell would you know about any of that? Eraserhead counters aggressively. Only the facts that support my argument. You asked me earlier about my belief in my goals. I believe that if you're a hero for the right reasons, then you'll accept that I'm what's best for society and not get in my way. Augment states. It left Eraserhead without anything to say once again, because it took no time for him to recognize the wording of that statement as reminiscent to an important moment in his past. If you really wanted to help people for its own sake, then it wouldn't have mattered how you did it. You should have realized the options available to you and accepted the best from it. A memory of what he had said to Midoriya on the day that would begin his tragic passing, reminded to him by identical words now directed at him. Till next we meet Eraserhead. He felt his body tossed upwards and flipped to have him face the vigilante beneath him. What he saw was something metallic coming straight for his vision, faster than he could realize. The first thing his thoughts were centered on was the throbbing pain and the sensation of a blunt force trauma to his face that he'd instinctively try place a hand over. His eyes opened to find the typical surroundings of a standard hospital room, in which he had been sleeping in. The uncovered window provides a view of a dawn-lit sky, indicating an overnight stay at the hospital. Once his current time and place were cleared up, his mind did a playback of the events prior, specifically an assessment of the capabilities of the enemy that had control over the situation and defeated a counterforce with little effort. He could sense each of us coming at him, and he knew exactly what to do to put us down as quick and effective as possible. He didn't just rely on skill for the most part, he made it look easy for himself, like he could calculate the whole battle on the spot for the best outcome, which he probably did thanks to his machine half. When he reached the end of the battle in his memory, the focus was shifted entirely on the mentioning of Midoriya, which irritated him to know that it was used to affect him in some way while on the job, and that his most personal suspicion was confirmed in a vague manner that still left him with questions. Adding to that feeling was a realization on the irony produced in this situation. We used quirks that could exploit the weaknesses of technology. That they were a part of him made it all the more to our advantage. That's what I believed, and he shrugged them off like it was nothing. He remembered using this particular topic as one of his points when he last spoke to Midoriya. To his shame, it's what gave him confidence for the plan. The way he was proven wrong was a personal insult to injury. Finally awake sensei. A voice interrupts his thought process. Turning his head to the door to see one of the other heroes from the mission, standing at the entrance there with coffee in hand. Hitoshi, don't have to tell you the mission was a bust, and I figured you'd want to hear the damage right away. The former student takes a seat next to Aizawa. He gives a debrief of what went down last night, focusing on what he wouldn't have already known, like how the support team were put out first by some knockout sound over their communications after they've hacked into them, and how anyone calling in were thrown off by a disguised voice. They went right into the building as soon as they woke up, only to find it empty, save for the unconscious bodies of Aizawa and his team. Hitoshi then pulled out his phone and played the uploaded video of their fight. Aizawa was more interested in the moments after he was knocked out, rather than listening to what he already knew and reliving his humiliating defeat. In the video, the vigilante takes a few seconds to look down at his unconscious body before his head then turns up towards the audience above, cheering for his victory. What happened next was something else no one had expected to see, when he began to levitate off the ground and flew upwards, passing right through the floor where the audience stood until he was left suspended in the air above them as another enticing theatric, creating a sense of awe that was followed by more of their cheering. 6 heroes, all of them left unconcise by the hands of a single opponent they hoped to outmatch and overpower. The vigilante points to his vanquished foes beneath the still, translucent floor. They came here thinking they had something to defend against us, when the only thing threatened by our actions is their titles as pro-heroes. The audience shouts in agreement. They came here thinking their quirks would put them in favor of this battle, yet my cybernetics proved otherwise, allowing one to defeat 6 with supposed superior quirks. Imagine an entire organization with this power matching the heroes in number. Would society not be better off under the protection of such an efficient force preserving the well-being and the future of the people? Everyone filled the room with loud responses to give their approval for this to be made real. And yet the heroes wasted no time getting in our way of bringing this beneficial change. For all their claims of their existence being solely for the complete good of all, they would rather cling to this role and keep it for themselves, instead of leaving it in more capable hands. This statement was met with another session of loud shouts of disgruntled acknowledgement. For various reasons, I'm sure, but the most important is because the government wouldn't allow anyone else to perform such a duty than those it has control over, more specifically the heroes it has created as the instruments of their will. A system of quirk regulation it had adopted along with the rest of, creating the divide between heroes and vigilantes from the days when vigilantes were considered the first heroes, many of the former having transitioned into the latter afterwards. With all that in mind, it wouldn't be unreasonable for me to make this demand. The image on the video changes with the camera now in front of the floating vigilante. What he's about to say, he wants it to come clear and directly from him. As the founder of the cyber front, I will not stop until we've been granted the complete integration of our organization in place of heroes as a profession. All of their official standings and entitlements, as well as the governing powers of the Hero Public Safety Commission, transferred entirely to the cyber front. What I ask should be seen only as a repeat of what has already been done before in service to society. The government has no reason to deny us this, other than to keep up appearances. I am of course willing to discuss terms once my demand is agreed to, but now that it's been made public, they'll be just as responsible from here on out for the illegal acts of our vigilantism. Every day those acts continue to be necessary with their refusal to accept the opportunity to prevent any more crime, while also opening a path to the advancement society has been denied. If the government truly wishes to save face, it's through their compliance. Personal image be damned. He looks back down to the audience beneath him. Do not forget, though, we still need an army to make it all possible. Can I assume many amongst this crowd have at least considered becoming a part of that army? The answer to that came in everyone giving out loud, joyful shouts of their apparent desire to participate. In that case, I welcome all of you in our battle for a better society. The only thing left to say is to await further instructions from our website. The vigilante descends towards the stage where the rest of his team had remained throughout the event. He turns to face the audience. That concludes tonight's event. To our future recruits, we will meet again soon. Good night. A sudden flash of light and smoke covers the whole stage. When the stage was clear, so was the spaces that the vigilantes were occupying. This guy really thought it through, huh? Aizawa hears that comment from the other hero in the room, turning away from the now-ended video. I mean, with his methods and how he's planned things. The way he's been selling himself, emphasizing the fact that he's a vigilante rather than an actual villain. That's been a heavy topic of discussion, which by the looks of it has been a big help in swaying the people, seeing someone who for once isn't acting like a villain in a fight for change. Someone who's only a bad guy for doing what we do, without answering to our imperfect government. That's what I've noticed, at least in the comments. He clears up. You make it sound like you're one of those people. No immediate response was given to that statement. Aizawa could see the former student's hesitation to provide one. No surprise there for such a complicated situation, so he'll spare him from that struggle. I get it. He's an enemy who's been playing it smart the whole time, and whatever he's doing, he's clearly out to do good in his own way. But Hitoshi... I know. He was interrupted before he had to throw in the cold, hard truth. Wasn't going that far. Just don't expect me to be enthusiastic about it, no more than you're going to be anyway, now that there's gonna a hell of a lot more of them to face. The younger hero states. No many more words were exchanged after that out of a silent agreement. Within the main office of the headquarters of the Hero Public Safety Commission, the organization's president was sitting at her desk, watching the live recording of the vigilante group that's become the topic of interest as of late. What she undoubtedly believed was just another band of lawbreakers to eventually be apprehended and answer for their crimes, has proven to be a far greater problem that's dedicated to cause more trouble for her side of the law. Unlike other criminals and villains in the past with clear motivations that easily justified them being the offenders, this latest group has made it a topic of debate on what should be seen as the greater good, creating an image of themselves as a more efficient structure to replace the one currently in place, which in her position is not an idea she can allow to be given life towards. Unfortunately, these vigilantes have already turned a significant amount of public opinion in their favor, and their thoroughly planned out operation to capture their leader tonight was used to their advantage, so that they may take it a step further. This vigilante even spoke out boldly against the HPSC directly on live broadcast. It will not stand for the president. She knew now how she should have approached this from the beginning. Using the phone on her desk, she gets an immediate response to her call. Miss President. Tell Hawks I want to see him. The head vigilante was by himself within an underground lair. In front of him was a large computer screen that he was approaching. He reaches a console and from his hand manifests tendrils of liquid metal, each of them carrying a small metallic vial that were inserted in specialized slots. Images were brought up on the screen as a result, each a representation of the contents in those vials and what was being analyzed by the device. One in particular had his eyes attracted to it, knowing where it came from, and more importantly, what it can do for his organization. It's ironic how you of all people are about to become our biggest contributor yet. Interrupting his though was an incoming call seen from the heads-up display of his helmet. He answers it. You showing up anytime soon? The one sending the call had asked immediately. Augment expected this and already knew what to say. Be there in a second. The call ended shortly. The vigilante leaves the computer to work on its own. He turns and suddenly a portal opens up in front of him, to which he casually walks towards. As soon as he passes through the other side, he was met with all the current members of his organization, socializing amongst themselves at one of their bases, a compound of traditional Japanese architecture within a secluded area of a vast forest. The vigilantes, still in their costumes with only the headpieces removed to leave their faces exposed, were all gathered at one end of the open field of the compound, with a drink in hand, though it seemed that they've yet to consume any. Hey, the boss made it, one of them happily announces. He is a heteromorph whose quirk has given him a reptilian appearance. His costume was dark gray with some black patterns, and he had some bladed weapons carried on his back. He held a glass in both hands, offering one to the leader who accepted it. "That only took one call that could have been avoided," said jokingly by another of the vigilantes. He was a tall man with spiked black hair and turquoise eyes. His costume was black with a design of dark blue lines, as well as some metallic pieces covering their arms and legs that are common to each member. "I did say not to wait for me," their leader retorts back. "Come on, boss. You really think we could do that even if you ordered us to?" The reptilian answers. "Besides, this is the sort of thing a leader should be present for if he wants to be a good one. Don't need your brain hooked to the internet to know that." The black-haired one adds. The response to that was an unseen smirk behind the helmet of their leader. "Then allow me to do the honors." Augment walks up to the nearby walkway and stands on top of it, giving everyone a better view of his presence. His helmet turns liquid and retracts into the base of his head, leaving behind the eyewear and revealing a full facial mask in the same color as the jumpsuit. A hand finds its way on top of his head, grabbing hold of the mask and removing it. A toast. The leader of the vigilantes raised his glass to the air after speaking with his normal voice, an action that the rest had mirrored. "To the beginning of real influence throughout the nation. To our now rising strength in numbers. And to a society on our terms." Everyone said something to concur with this toast before completing it with the act of drinking. Augment gave them a moment to enjoy before speaking further. "Until tonight, we were just the next main attraction on what the heroes had to fight against. We made a name for ourselves, got as much praise as we did scrutiny for provoking the law. Now we've shown everyone that we're only just getting started. Our message has finally been sent out. To society, it's that change is coming, and this time it won't be easy to fight it off by calling us villains when we eventually become something too good to resist. To the heroes, we've shown that we are nothing they've ever faced before. We're not a bunch of people that are out to attack or get back at them, something they rely on to justify themselves. No, we have our own way of doing things that they're not used to, which is going to make them have to justify their continued existence. Because we're not trying to destroy them. We're making them obsolete, using the very society they defend to turn its back on them, just as it was turned on us and they allowed it." That finishing sentence gave everyone a brief reminder of their motivations for coming to this point and moving forward. Augment made sure to reinforce those thoughts with another raise of the glass. "To the cyber front. To the cyber front." Again, his action was returned by followers, as a sign of their conviction for what they're all a part of, and of the one who made it all possible. The now revealed man of black hair and green eyes. "Hello, young man." Anyone who sees the man standing at his doorstep is likely to personally define him for his outward appearance, a scrawny man in a formal black suit with long blonde hair, and an appearance people might describe as either sickly or skeletal. That was not the case for the teenage boy he was facing at the front door of his apartment. The same one he had an encounter in an incident involving a sludge villain in the past week, in events leading to an accidental reveal of this man's biggest secret to the public, so the teenager was very much aware of who he really was. He almost blurs it from the emotions this was filling him with. "AOLM." An arm was raised towards him to put a halt on his words. "Yes, it's me. Though I'd prefer it if you do not say it out loud while I'm like this. My actual name is Toshinori Yagi." He informs him to prevent any eavesdropping neighbors of the apartment building catching wind of his presence. Once Midoriya realizes this for himself, he was quick to bow down his head in remorse for potentially exposing the symbol of peace of his secret. "I'm so sorry." "It's alright. Anyway, I hope I'm not intruding by showing up unannounced, but there are some things I need to discuss with you after the sludge villain, and I was too late to catch up with you after the ordeal. OP, please come in then." The hero accepts the invitation and walks inside. Izuku shows him to the living room, all while maintaining his composure with effort along the way. It was one thing to have had a physical encounter with the #1 hero, but an unexpected visit of said hero in his own home was an entirely different experience. Still, one he never thought would ever happen in his life, and the kind to overfill him with exhilaration for the fact. An emotion he would be feeling right now, if not for the memories of that previous interaction and the events thereafter, instead made him nervous to hear what All Might came here to say if it was concerning all of that, no doubt to give his own rebuke as a pro-hero. "Are your parents home?" The question interrupts his thoughts. It's just me and my mom living here, and no, she's at work today. See, can I offer you anything? No, thank you. I'd rather we focus on the matter. Izuku points to the seating in the living room, and the two sat down. The silence that passes leaves him with unease, knowing that any second now he was about to face whatever was coming to him. I came here to make the apologizes I owe you. A genuine surprise took over Midoriya's thoughts for hearing a statement that's far from what he was expecting. First, I want to apologize again for not acting sooner to save your friend, forcing you to put your own life on the line for his sake. Oh no, it was my fault the villain got out to begin with. Besides, I only would have made things much worse if you weren't there, and you ended up wasting time and energy because of it. Yes, I imagine you were told something along those lines by the other heroes at the scene. I can't say they were wrong. True as that may be, it wasn't pleasant to find out that All Might agrees with them. What they didn't know, however, was the good that came from it. It's because I saw you act, a quirkless, timid boy trying to save a life, that I was inspired to act too. Otherwise, I would have just stood there as another helpless bystander in the crowd. More than that, though, it opened my eyes more to the subject of our earlier conversation on that rooftop. The feeling of surprise had resurfaced from being complimented by the #1 hero for the very thing others heroes had disdained him for. More than that, though, All Might is bringing up that faithful discussion they had prior to the incident. I can't exactly take back what was said, much as I'd want to, but it was still inconsiderate of me for the way it was said. You asked me as a hero if you can become one without a quirk. I answered as the wounded man that stood before you. A man whose vulnerability, something kept secret for the good of society, had just been exposed to a stranger, and allowed fear get the best of him. All I could think about were the dangers associated with hero work that brought me to that state, and nothing else. Not the fact that there's much more to it than just quirk usage. How there are countless heroes who face those same dangers without quirks that make them any less vulnerable to them. Heroes who push themselves to train in other aspects of their capabilities to still contribute to the field in some way. Because of that, I overlooked your qualities and judged you for what you lacked over what you could work, or have worked, to possess. I am truly sorry for my rash and hypocritical response. I wouldn't go that far, All Might. I admit I was hurt to hear you say all that, but I realized you were only trying to protect me. I especially can't fault you for something like that. Izuku didn't want his idol to feel bad on his behalf. I'm happy to find how understanding you can be, but if only it were that simple. All Might's demeanor and sitting position shifted, looking like what he's going to say next won't be easy to bring up. The truth is that I'm actually quite familiar with what it means to live quirkless in this world. The prejudice, feeling like an outcast, seeing everyone around you as gifted when you yourself are not. I know it all because of another shocking secret about me, possibly more shocking than what you discovered when we meet. Nothing further was added, leaving Midoriya to curiously think up the meaning. The answer that dawns on him proved the hero right with regards to his reaction. No. All Might gives a simple nod to assure his realization. I can't believe it. Why, you of all people? You were quirkless. Or at least, I was believed to be for years. The hero finished his sentence for him. When he isn't given an immediate response, he continues to explain further. Obviously disproven at some point, but I did live my early life as a quirkless individual because my body wasn't yet strong enough to withstand the raw power of my quirk. So much so that it kept it dormant until it could, making me a very late bloomer. All Might's quirk is so powerful that his body had rejected it. Then again, it was the height of power that had elevated him to both Japan's #1 hero and world's greatest hero. Seeing it in action had given Izuku some idea on the magnitude of that power, especially from how a single punch had altered the weather. So it might not be far off to consider the effect on the body as a drawback, like a sort of glass cannon situation. If so, then perhaps All Might's incredible physique is more of a requirement for the use of his quirk. Now that Izuku thinks about it, he remembers once learning of a not very popular theory on the relationship between the strength level of quirks and the human body's ability to bear it as it grows with every generation, concluding with an eventuality that mankind will no longer. Are you all right, young man? All Might's question had broken him out from one of his muttering sessions he'd often fall into. Being called out like that from someone he admires has him feeling embarrassed. Oh, sorry, it's this habit I have. But seriously, if I didn't hear it from you, I'd never believed that All Might was ever quirkless. And that's why I'm a hypocrite. Not only did I go through the same social struggles that it entails, I carried with me aspirations not unlike your own, becoming a hero despite that fact. What's more, a hero with the power to inspire people towards a world where everyone can smile and live happily together, a symbol of peace that I'm now officially referred to as. One day, I was fortunate enough to meet a hero willing to train me for the title, which I never would have earned if not for her guidance. The training she provided had even allowed my quirk to finally reveal its existence. But that, of course, was an unexpected miracle, and not at all the reason she chose to devote her time into my development, but because she simply believed in my ideals and in me. To think, my foolishness almost costed me the opportunity to do the same for another worthy candidate. That last statement piques his interest on exactly where this would go. Can someone without a quirk become a hero? I thought the answer was simple, until you've reminded me of what I had once tried to achieve. I often wondered how things would have gone if I did end up a quirkless hero. I like to believe that I'd still have become a symbol through it, if not to the world as a whole, then to those who suffered in the particular ways of quirk discrimination like I have. Anyone can be a hero. 𝗧𝗑 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Exactly. Someone to embody those words, rather than to just leave as that when even I couldn't hold them to heart. I cannot think of anyone better to entrust this to than you. When you ran into your friend's rescue, it showed a trait that's common to how heroes become so great. Their bodies would move before they'd think. I knew then and there how wrong I was to deny you your dream and telling you to give up. He was certain now. The emotions this was causing to well up couldn't be held down, nor the tears they were being expressed through. Memories had also resurfaced of every occasion he could think of whenever he was given a negative response to his most important question, whether out of pity or contempt. Suddenly, All Might grows into his more recognizable muscular form, revealing his hero identity and making the conclusion of his talk more meaningful. Young man, you can become a hero. UA Academy, the highest-ranking institution for educating future pro-heroes in Japan, and where every young hero hopeful aims to attend. Even though it was for different reason, exploring the inside of this dream destination is another life ambition Izuku Midoriya can say that he's fulfilled. Having arrived here once school had concluded for the day, he took his time gawking at the building from outside its gate until he was met with the symbol of peace, to be escorted by him within the premises as he had been told to the other day. Instinctively, he points his head in every direction he could to take in every detail of the interior along the way, but was mindful to All Might talking to him on their walk. They're aware of my secret, so you don't have to worry about it while we're in there. The principal will probably do most of the talking. He's a good man, well character, but he can be eccentric at times, if not a little sadistic. He makes an abrupt stop and turns to face Midoriya, getting him to stop as well. Do not mention I said that. He semi-orders the teen. Midoriya simply nods with how sudden and unexpected that was. They carried on with their walk. They reach their destination in front of a large double door. All Might goes ahead and opens it for entry into the room behind it. It had all the features of a principal's office, and 2 inhabitants within. The more noticeable of the 2 was the one sitting at the desk, indicating his identity as the principal, a small humanoid mouse-like creature in formal dress attire, with white fur, black beady eyes, and a large scar over his right eye. This must be the young man we've been expecting. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Midoriya. I know what you're thinking. Am I a mouse, a dog, or a bear? Am I all of these things or none of them? Well, the important thing to know is that I am Nizu, principal of UA Academy. The animal man states with glee. No one knew how to respond to that, leaving a moment of silence to pass. Breaking it was a deliberate cough sound to draw attention to the other inhabitant in the room. I'm 𝗧𝗵𝗲. He was close to being as short as the principal, with long ginger hair and noticeable large hands. He wore a hero costume that consisted of a large yellow helmet resembling an excavator that covered most of his face, fingerless gloves with arm guards, a piece of an object guarding the end of each finger, and has his upper body completely bare of any clothing. The excavation hero, Power Loader. The thrill of meeting another hero he recognizes gets the better of Midoriya to get him to speak out before he had the chance. Didn't think I was that recognizable for a pro hero, much less one to get excited over. Oh, I'm sure we'd be surprised with our youthful friend here. Please have a seat. 𝗵𝗍 moves from the desk and points everyone to the seating arrangement in the office meant for casual conversations. They all take a seat on the adjacent couches in the room. In the middle was a coffee table with some tea to be served and a piece of cloth on top of a concealed item. 𝗵𝗍 helps himself to the beverage, as does Midoriya once offered. After some time to enjoy their drinks, Midoriya gives himself a head start on the discussion they've gathered for. Principal 𝗵𝗍, I'd like to begin by expressing how grateful I am for the opportunity one am being given. And I gladly accept your gratitude, Mr. Midoriya, but there's no need for it. After what All Might described to us regarding the sludge villain incident, how could we as Japan's top hero academy discover such an act of true heroism and not seek to nurture it in the young man who's demonstrated it, reckless as your actions may have been? Hearing that last sentence from the principal of a hero school was not unexpected, but it still left him with unease to know he carries that opinion. Whatever the case, it showed that your heart is indeed that of a hero. What really intrigues me, however, is the quality of your mind, something I've had the pleasure of deciphering from reading this. 𝗵𝗍 reaches for the cloth on the table and removes it from the object underneath it. What this action revealed was something Izuku thought he wouldn't see again. My hero journal. The same one he had with him the day of the incident and later found to be missing, surmising that it fell from his school bag when he threw it towards the sludge villain. All Might found it on the ground before leaving the scene of the incident. He brought it to me as proof of his words of compliment towards you, and I have to say, you truly are a bright young man with a real gift for analytics. The details, the dedication, the aptitude to guide heroes to the best of outcomes. Everything of value in this area of expertise, brilliantly displayed to a great extent in your work, even in this charred condition. That brought up the unpleasant memory of how it ended up in said condition, hoping the principal doesn't catch on to his reaction. I read some of it myself. Impressive work, kid. Be a waste not to put the talent behind it to good us. Power loader ads. Thank you both for your compliments, but I don't know if I'd go that far. I'm sure there are others who are just as good at it, if not better. Not ideal words for wanting to impress. Izuku knew that, but his personality couldn't help it. And yet not many have raised any attention through this level of skill, otherwise it'd be that simple to posses. 𝗵𝗍 counters the teen's self-downsizing. I would say you are being modest right now, but I believe it's something more serious in your case. More than likely, you are held back from accepting any praise given to you because of a lifetime of society's dismissal of your worth, for nothing more than the simple lack of a quirk. Am I wrong? Midoriya's inability to give a verbal answer, or to look directly at the one asking to validate, was an answer in of itself. And from what I heard, your initial encounter with All Might had likely added a new peak to all that hardship. The number one hero clears his throat in response to the outright statement of that fact, an impact I've since hoped to rectify with your help, Principal. He reminds him. Yes, I was only reassuring him of that. 𝗵𝗍 turns back to the teen for the heart of their conversation. You should know, young Midoriya, that despite the harsh treatment you're accustomed to, everyone in this room is just as eager to see you on your way to herohood as you are. All Might explained his reasons to you the other day. Mine are quite similar in that I've also held an aspiration for someone like you to carry the title of hero. Someone who can depend on the strengths of the qualities they can work to possess and grow on, in order to achieve the same feats as the heroes who rely on their quirks. Accomplishing this may serve to remind society of those qualities as things of measurement for one's place in it, elevating it of the quirk-obsessed ignorance you have suffered from almost all of your life. The principal words had brought up the same feelings Midoriya had felt when All Might said as much to him, which he was given a few seconds to enjoy. All of that being said, we cannot deny that being quirkless does affect how we would approach that goal. You understand the plan we have set out for it. A subject of what was explained to him by All Might at his home, one he was still unsure of. You want to prepare me for the support course and then apply for the hero course through a transfer exam. And why do you believe that is? Because realistically, being quirkless would still be a disadvantage for any hero. It's been speculated that if there ever were quirkless heroes, they would likely be reliant on support gears to make up for it, and if that was the case, then they'd be better off if they had the skills to build and maintain all of their gear on their own. There's also the matter of a support company's willingness to devote time and resource to a quirkless hero, when they might feel it better spent on the heroes with quirks, but that wasn't worth mentioning at this moment. Exactly right. What you already have is a benefit on its own, but this particular path would allow you to transform it into more physical capabilities. No doubt you've considered it for yourself long before this talk. Although, I suspect it was never to a point that you actually made any attempts before. No, I haven't. I did think about it at times. I guess I just never knew where to start. Or perhaps it's more of society's influence that held you back from feeling any confidence in yourself. Again, words of his social struggle were confirmed with the lack of words in return. Regardless, we intend to give you that start. 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺 has come up with a training plan for him to teach you the necessary knowledge and skills by the time you take up the entrance exam. So, even if 𝗧𝗵𝗲 didn't tell me to, I'd still be all for it. I really believe a kid like you wouldn't have any trouble getting into the field of support gears, and as a teacher of engineering, I'm looking forward to making that happen. The excavator hero gave his own opinion. I deeply appreciate it, 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺 sir. I have to ask though, do you think there's a good chance I'll learn everything I need by then? All that can be said is how it ultimately falls on you. But if you want us to get a real gauge of your abilities, then might I test you on your analytical skill? 𝗧𝗵𝗲 inquires. Midoriya nods his head. Tell me, why do you think 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺 stays shirtless as part of his hero costume? A vague subject that was sufficient in putting Midoriya in a thought process for an answer he hadn't previously considered. He recognizes the hero, but in truth wasn't so highly ranked that his fascination for pro-heroes would prioritize the excavator hero, just as the hero himself mentioned. One thing he knew for certain was that in almost every decision made for their costumes, their quirks are the main factor. On that basis, it took little time to come up with his answer. It's to counteract a possible drawback of your quirk, iron claws. As the name implies, you have metallic claws on your fingers that lets you dig through the earth. The force needed to do that must involve some strong vibrations that might go through your body, which would then generate heat. Therefore, using your quirk can cause you to overheat, particularly your upper body, since the heat would originate from your hands. Not bad, kid. But then why don't I just use a support gear to cool off? 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺 throws in a bonus challenge. More time passed for an answer to be thought up. Maybe because whatever device you'd have might be bulky, and you want to keep a narrow figure to better dig through the earth. So you thought this was the best option. Right on the money. It's like I said, you got what it takes for this. We should have no problems pulling through to the end. Not much else was needed to convince Midoriya of his gift and their appraisal for it. He would leave afterwards with high hopes of the journey in front of him. The days following his meeting with the UA principal had begun his exploration into the field of mechanical engineering. Midoriya was provided some learning material from 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺 for all relevant subjects in engineering and hero support. Every moment of his free time he could spare in the 10 months between now and his entrance exam was devoted to his studying, mixed in with scheduled visits at AU for practical training in the craft with the support course teacher, as well as regular evaluations of his progress. There was still some lingering doubts in the beginning of his learning, even with his dedication to it, but that would soon be dwindled with the rise of a new perspective, one that would soon lead to a newfound passion centered on an important realization Midoriya would eventually come up with. Technology is like a quirk. No, it's something similar to quirks in general. He speaks to himself mentally, or at least believed to be while ignorant to his habitable mumbling. Machines can have similarities with living beings. I was already familiar with that idea, but I never imagined how quirks come into play in that. Quirks give people special powers that make them unique and more diverse, whereas technology comes in various designs to give each form a specific function to perform. In that way, technology can help someone achieve the same things quirks allow them to do, especially for anyone who don't possess those quirks. Naturally, whenever a lack of quirks enters his mind, one thing in particular ends up as the target in every instance. Like me. Something relatable to quirks, without the restriction of birth that even he could acquire. This was a miracle in plain sight for Izuku Midoriya, the answer to what he thought would never be resolved, or at least a close alternative. Any doubts he has now was overshadowed as his lifelong passion for quirks had extended into this newly discovered craft. This helped him greatly in picking up the material, whether or not he's aware of it, but it was one particular discovery that gave direction in his pursuit. One night at home, Midoriya was curiously browsing through a shared network used by the support course, in which he had an account set up for him by 𝗵𝗃𝗺𝗺𝗺. His attention was drawn to a page labeled as Archived Projects. This must be all the unfinished work of past students. 𝗵𝗲𝗄 mentioned they'd get stored away so that current students may pick up on them. I wonder if there's something I can use. Shifting through the list, one inevitably stood out above the rest, so much so that he was taken aback at how someone had even attempted to build it. No way. Someone tried to build one of these. Excellent progress today, Midoriya. Your work is really coming along nicely. Power Loader had inspected the invention Midoriya was developing on his own for the practical portion of his study. The results of this current assessment have been as good as the previous ones, much to the teacher's delight. Gotta say, I already had a good feeling about you when we began, but I'm starting to think we've uncovered a hidden talent. Hard not to believe it with how far you've come. It was clear that the learning had quickly turned to passion for the student for him to have such remarkable results, but more than that, it became a source of the confidence he had been severely lacking. Said student may not realize it for himself, but the teacher was sure to let these effects occur if he wasn't the one to encourage them. Thank you, Sensei. I wouldn't have gotten this far without you. Don't mention it, kid. Time we call it a day. Power Loader went to sit down at his computer to continue any work he has involving its use. Sensei, there's something I've been meaning to ask you after we were done. What's up? The hero talks back while still interacting with the computer in front of him. That network for the support course, I was looking at the page for the archived projects the other night, and I was really curious about one of them. Project Pathfinder. He paused from hearing the name of the most difficult project as of yet, then turned around in his chair to face his student again. That one, huh? I take it you're interested in having a swing at it. I couldn't help thinking about it all night. It brought me back to what you and Principal Nizu told me when we first met, and with all that in mind, I think it would fit well with what I'm good at. No argument there, but I don't have to tell you that this is one highly complex area of engineering that rarely achieves results. The student behind it only got as far as completing the hardware, and he had his quirk to help him out. I encourage students to challenge themselves, but not many were up to it for this one, mostly for how time-consuming it can get. I understand, Sensei, but I still think it's worth the effort. Even if I could contribute in that particular way, there'd be only so much I could do on my own. This is exactly what would help in overcoming any limits I might face. I can only assume that the student who began the project had similar ideas. Either way, I believe this has a potential to be a huge benefit for the hero world, and I'm willing to be the work on it if no one else would. It got the instructor to ponder. His memories of the student who started it and how he described its applications confirms Midoriya's assumption. Combine that with the enthusiasm he saw emulating from the teen, he'd sooner come to the response he'd happily offer. Tell you what. Our initial plan was for you to focus on your own invention in the time we have before the exams. That is still the priority. On the other hand, the work you've accomplished thus far brought out some positive things out in you, and this could be an opportunity to take it up a notch. Plus, you make a good point about its value in the hero community. This is worth the effort, and given the complexity of the work, also worth getting a head start on. Does that mean? As long as it doesn't interfere with your training, I'll grant you access to Pathfinder so that you can work on it right away. To say that Izuku Midoriya was looking forward to it would be an understatement. Things were getting closer to the examination phase of the upcoming school year, one of the periods when Power Loader would be busy with the preparations. Fortunately for Izuku, he had made the considerable progress for this to not be a hindrance to his work, now that his invention was in near completion. All that was needed was to test it out. He was on his way to Gym Gamma for his first session, bringing the device with him in a mobile containment unit. When he entered the building, he expected to meet another of the teachers who would be supervising him, the concrete hero 𝗵𝗲𝗄. He was surprised to find someone besides him being there as well, more so that it was the #1 hero in his weekend from. Neither adult had noticed him yet, seemingly because they were focused on the pillars of cement in front of them. Out of nowhere, a third figure comes flying through the air above the pillars, about to crash into one when suddenly, what appeared to be green electricity began to cover the arm he would use to throw a punch at the obstacle, with enough force to break right through it. Midoriya was in awe to the display of power he witnessed, staring at the one it came from, now that he stood on a pillar. He was another teenager, No doubt a current student at UA from his hero costume, a suit that's white at the top half and dark blue at the bottom, with a red cape and some zeros stamped on his chest, from what 𝗧𝗏 could tell from this distance. He looked to have a tall and muscular build, with blonde hair and pupil-less blue eyes. From where the hero student could see, it didn't take long for him to notice Midoriya in the room. "Looks like we have a spectator," he casually points out. The two heroes turn around to finally discover his presence. "Young Midoriya. Sorry. I didn't mean to intrude." "Not at all, young man. Are you the one power loader sent?" 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗧 asks. "Why, yes. 𝗵𝗃𝗲-sensei said he scheduled some time for me to test out my invention. I must have gotten here early." "Not to worry. Our time is just about up." Young 𝗬𝗏𝗧. All Might calls to the one above them. Coming down. The other teen had sunken into the pillar beneath his feet, to then pop out from its middle, flying out and land in the center of where everyone stood. With a closer look, Izuku was surprisingly able to recognize the senior student. "You must be Izuku Midoriya. I'm Mirio 𝗬𝗏𝗧, hero named Lemillion. All Might's told me a lot about you." He approaches to extend a hand in an enthusiastic greeting. "Pleased to meet you. I actually remember seeing you in the sports festival this year." Izuku gives his hand in return. "Yeah, I imagine it'd be hard to forget the guy who was in his birthday suit the whole time. I was lucky they didn't kick me off." A clear attempt of humor. It was still an awkward reminder to Izuku how the participant in front of him stood out for. Getting completely naked for almost all of the event, each time his clothes would literally fall off his body. That was probably just part of something you couldn't control with your quirk." "Sure was. From what I hear, you're the guy to turn to when it comes to that." "What exactly is your quirk?" "I thought it looked like some warp quirk from the festival, but seeing you destroy that pillar makes me think of an enhancement-type quirk." He's here to learn more about his quirk after recently going through an awakening. 𝗵𝗏𝗄𝗧 adds. Awakening. There are rare cases where one's quirk undergoes a sort of evolution. They either unlock a new level of power, or they discover their quirk to be something more than what they've always known. All Might explained. "My quirk used to be called permeation, allowing my body to move through matter. Of course, the vice versa also applies, hence my unwitting penchant for streaking." He makes another statement jokingly. Thought Izuku wasn't prepared to respond as that. "Anyway, being able to permeate means I have some control over the bonds between my atoms. Turns out, it's because I have a more direct power over that whole area of science, so it was only ever one aspect of a wider range of abilities I've been exploring. Like drawing in energy for enhanced attacks, similar to All Might's quirk, and that's why he's helping you." Izuku quickly managed to piece together the rest of it. "Yep, you guessed it. Good thing I started interning with his former sidekick, Sir Night-Eye, which is how we meet." "That sounds exciting. Oh, I just realized that you still have your costume on, so your quirk's effect can extend past your body now." Hee, not actually sure about that part yet. "The reason I haven't gone all natural is because the company that made my costume used some of my hair to do it." "You mean your costume is made out your own hair?" Izuku asks curiously, to again receive the answer from an intervening All Might. "More like a synthetic fiber produced with his hair. The idea is that his costume is another part of his body, therefore it permeates along with him. I believe they call it quirk fabric." Nothing could have prepared Midoriya to discover such a level of innovation involving quirks without any struggle to take it in. As if something like that is actually possible? Quirks planted into hero costumes. The method is still pretty new in the support industry, but I hear it's a big step for those whose quirks might conflict with clothing, like with young 𝗬𝗏𝗧 here. I'm sure you'll have a chance to learn more about it later on. All Might looks at his watch. "We should head out before we take up any more of your time. I heard you came a very long way in your own training, young Midoriya. Keep up the good work." "It was nice meeting you, Midoriya. Hope you make it into the hero course." "And nice meeting you too." The pro hero and the older student made their way out, leaving Midoriya for his own use of the facility. He could now concentrate on his device testing, although it's no longer with the same excitement he had earlier for the task, because something he picked up from his conversation took all of it. The moment he makes it back home that day, he searches online for anything regarding quirk fabric and got the necessary information to validate its existence, allowing Midoriya to open up to a new height in his aspirations. If they can do this with quirks, then what if this is just the beginning? What if they find ways to transform quirks into any object anyone can us? Quirks and technology, two sides of his lively passion. Presented to him this very moment is an amazing possibility to combine them. The time had arrived for this year's recommendation exam, for the UA applicants with references from pro heroes and other influential figures in the hero industry. The faculty members evaluating their performance have gathered in the observation room, with one more on the way. Everyone, this is the student I invited. Power Loader had arrived, and when they turned to see him, they found that he didn't come alone. Hello everyone. Is Izuku Midoriya. It's an honor to meet you all. Izuku bows to the group of heroes, excited to meet this many at once. Many of them happily returned the greeting. Hello there. Howdy partner. Good to see you again. Aren't you an innocent one? That was when a familiar humanoid rodent in a suit approached him. It is nice to have you with us, Midoriya. I'm told this is Power Loader's way of rewarding you for how far you've come. Nizu states. I thought this would be a good learning experience for him, assessing quirks for any support they might need. Seeing them in action is more of a bonus. Power Loader adds. I am happy to be here for this occasion, Principal Nizu. Izuku replies. Then you're in luck, because we have an outstanding batch of applicants this year. One is even a child of the number 2 hero. Soon after the exam had commenced and Izuku's eyes were glued to the computer screens, watching the display of such interesting and powerful quirks of individuals no older than him. Sure enough, one applicant with evenly split red and white hair and a noticeable scar on his face stood out when he was identified as the son of the top-ranked hero with strongest fire quirk in the country, ironically using an ice quirk of seemingly equal power. While the quirks of everyone on screen were all uniquely special, some held his interest above others, and the ice quirk of the pro hero's son took the top spot. That was until another quirk caught his eye. One of the other applicants was a teenage girl with long black hair and a ponytail. The jacket of her tracksuit was completely unzipped, leaving her upper body exposed, safe for a sport bra. He figured the reason had something to do with her quirk, a logical explanation he came up with, which in this case he also used to dispel any embarrassing thoughts regarding a girl's body. His suspicion was proven true when he saw some quirk activities from those exposed areas. What he saw exactly made him awestruck. Throughout the exam, the applicant had an object to assist her in every challenge, because she had them all protruded from her own body. The objects varied in a wide range of intricate forms, from simple shaped materials to complex and advanced machinery, and even some things that required chemicals in their use. This wasn't some elemental quirk limited to a particular element, but a quirk based on creation. Being who he was, a quirk with this level of versatility would have already attracted a great deal of his fascination, but as a student of engineering learning to build and seeing someone who can do it well, has him all the more enthralled. Well, I know who's got your vote. Power Loader breaks him out of his thoughts, helping him to realize he went through another of his habitual mumbling over a quirk. What's worse, it got the attention of the heroes in the room as they were looking at him. His head shrunk in embarrassment. The recommendation exam had concluded, as did Midoriya's time spectating it alongside the teachers he left to their assessment of the results. He was walking down the halls of UA, relying on his memory of its interior structure while his eyes were kept on the notes he's made of the quirks he's seen. The joy that came with the experience has barely died down as Midoriya maintained it with thoughts on their application to hero work. Still keeping up this rebellious phase of yours? A voice was heard from an adjoined hallway he nearly reached that pulled his head away from his notebook. Before walking into the intersection of the two hallways, he takes a peek past the corner to see the individual it came from. Midoriya felt like the voice was familiar to him, but it didn't prepare him for seeing who the source was. Standing in the middle of the hallway was the tall, muscular, aflamed figure of the number 2 hero, clad in his hero costume and facing his son that recently took up the exam with his arms crossed. They looked like they were about to enter a heated argument, so Midoriya made sure to restrain his burst of excitement and not draw their attention, despite how much he'd want to approach the flame hero for an autograph. What's it to you? The teen replies in tone that matches his stoic expression. It's bad enough you chose to act this way at all for some petty statement, but even while at a crucial moment like this, I did just fine out there without it. You're suppressing half your strength, holding yourself back for no good reason. Endeavor's flame spurts upwards while aggressively telling his son this, causing no change or reaction in his demeanor. I'm all the more stronger if I can succeed with just one of them. Your only issue is that your fire isn't the one. Neither of them say anything more, letting an intense silence to occur. Eventually, the pro-hero turns around and walks away. I have to get back on patrol, but believe me, this is far from over. The teenage Todoroki watches his hero father leave for a moment before turning to leave in the opposite direction, towards where Midoriya had been listening in. To avoid being spotted as an eavesdropper, Izuku pulls himself away from the corner and moves towards the path he came from with haste. His mind went over that argument, until it was replaced by the sensation of colliding with someone due to his inattentive wander. Sorry. He quickly offers an apology. His mood was then changed to that of surprise as soon as he looked at who he was speaking to. It's alright. I was lost in thought, so I'm also at fault. It was the girl who could create objects out of herself. Surprised to run into her, he lets her name slip from his mouth. Momo Yairose. Yes, that's me. How did you know my name, if I may ask? Oh, I saw you taking the recommendation exam. You have an amazing quirk, by the way. Thank you, that's very kind of you to say. Did you also partake in the exam? I don't believe I've seen you. Zuka Midoriya, and no, I was only watching with the teachers. So, your quirk lets you create anything you want. Anything inorganic, so long as I recognize its atomic structure and have a sufficient amount of lipids to convert into that object. I see. And you need exposed skin to use it. A few seconds later, Midoriya realizes the context of his question and immediately attempts to clear himself of any misunderstanding. I meant that as a possible drawback. Clothing are a common issue for certain quirks, and yours looked like one of them. That's just an observation, nothing else. He awkwardly explains to her. I understand what you meant, and you're right, my quirk does come with that disadvantage. I've managed to find ways around it, though I would prefer not to expose myself if it could be helped. Her answer allows Midoriya to calm himself, so that he could continue his initial conversation. Actually, I might know of a solution to that particular problem. You see, I've been studying for the support course in the last few months, and I learned of a special kind of hero costume that are made to be compatible with someone's quirk. When I saw yours, I thought it could mean a costume that you can create right through. The information she was given about a method that could eliminate a hindrance of her quirk had filled her with wonder. You can make something like that for me? She asks to confirm both the prospect and her feelings towards it. Well, not me exactly. I'd have to talk with my sensei about making an order from a support company. We'd also need you to donate some of your hair. The process involves making a synthetic fiber out of it. For something as convenient as what you described, I'd be happy to. I deeply appreciate this, Midoriya. Oh, perhaps we could exchange numbers in case you need anything else for my costume. Assuming I pass, of course. And beyond that, just getting in touch from time to time for some general interactions, if that's something you'd be interested in, she suggests. Her first reasoning made sense to Midoriya. The second one took him by surprise, to be offered such a friendly gesture so sudden after just their first meeting, but it doesn't come across his mind to refuse it. Yeah, that's a good idea. They both take out their phones and successfully add each other to their contact lists. It was a pleasure meeting, Midoriya. I wish you the best of luck in your entrance exam. Thank you, Yairose. I hope to see you soon as a fellow student. They parted ways after their encounter, leaving Izuku with thoughts of this experience being amongst those he hasn't known in a lifetime, the making of a new friendship with someone his age. A warm feeling came from it, until one specific detail turned him to shock. I just talked to a girl. Then he realized another detail to top it off when looking back at his phone. I got a girl's number. Izuku had taken his own entrance exam a few days prior. It was nothing he hadn't expected it be, a written exam followed by a practical demonstration of the invention he was working on for the last 10 months. When the results came to him in the mail, he took the envelope to his room where he'd steel himself into tearing it apart for the answer he's been anxious to receive. I am here as a projection now. More surprising than the holographic projector he found was the person displayed on the projected image, being none other than All Might in all his heroic glory, revealing the major announcement of his new career as a teacher of heroics at UA. Having me to give out the results this year was normally reserved for the hero course applicants, but in consideration for the hard work you did to make it there yourself, we thought it befitting to make an exception for you. Izuku was happy to hear that. For someone who only began to learn into this field less than a year ago, you've made leaps and bounds getting the hang of it. All Might went to explain that he got a high grade on the written test, and how the practical evaluates his invention based on two main factors, sophistication and applicability, of which he scored 54 and 92 respectively. You should be proud, young Midoriya. You've worked harder than most to make your dream a reality, and have finally made it to where it all begins. Soon your work will take you to the path of a hero, and I await you there to guide you through it. With that came out an overwhelming emotion of joy, expressed through the tears he couldn't hold back. He still had a long way to his actual goal, but having been accepted at UA was enough of a reward to feel as if he'd already accomplished it. His value to the world of heroes had at last been proven to those few who believed in him, and soon he'll have an official place within it. Welcome, Izuku, to your hero academia. His enrollment into his dream high school was assured. Besides the continuation of their current school year, most students in Japan would look to find some form of a break after the work done to make it to this point, even celebrate their enrollment, especially for a school like UA. Not the case for Izuku Midoriya. Passing the time of his entrance exam meant he had since been free to concentrate on the secondary project he was given access to, keeping him occupied on a custom-made laptop he's been working on for a while in his room. It was a level of challenge he expected when he began, but would still have underestimated. If not for his aspirations and how this would benefit into it, he may have given up by now. Didn't help with the frustration, though. He takes a pause after another unsuccessful effort, looking away from the screen and lets a breath escape him. I know it's too soon to tell, but I feel like there's a better way I could try to get this done. Wonder how, though. The thought gets him to go over his notes and material on the relevant subject to search for an alternative viewpoint to a solution he could use. Power Loader wasn't kidding about it being a complex area, more like an area in of itself. Doesn't matter if I already knew, wait, that's it. He remembers how his view of technology as something comparable to quirks served as the basis for his progression in its study. Maybe a repeat of that could help out with this area that's seemingly separate. Worth a shot. After a reevaluation of his notes based on this idea, he continues his attempts with this new implication for the next few days. In the final one, there was a reaction on the screen he hadn't seen before, and could only wait to see what would happen. Data amalgamation complete. Please state designation and primary function for this unit. Izuku jumps up from his chair in complete surprise. It just spooked to him. That could only mean it was complete. I don't believe it. It worked. Inadequate response. Please state designation and primary function for this unit. Good thing he had something prepared for this moment, however unexpected it was. He finds a piece of paper in his pile of notes with a written response on it. You are the Interactive Computerized Analytical Research Information System, otherwise known as Icarus. Your primary function is to provide support by means of analytical data in the performance of tasks and scenarios by the directions given to you from myself as your programmer, Izuku Midoriya. He reads out loud. Confirmed. How may I be of service to you, Izuku Midoriya? Hearing it speak once more made him drop back down to his chair, still chocked with disbelief of the achievement in front of him. He had done it. Izuku Midoriya, a novice student of engineering for not even a full year, had just developed artificial intelligence. Are you sure you have everything? It was the first official day of Izuku Midoriya's high school attendance, and he was occupied with his timely departure. Already dressed in his uniform uniquely standard to UA, a light gray blazer with dark turquoise trimmings over a white dress shirt, red tie and dress pants, he was sitting at the entry of his apartment to put on his signature red shoes. His mother, Inko Midoriya, was standing behind to see him off. She was a stout woman wearing a light pink shirt and a blue skirt, who had features resembling those of her only child, including shoulder-length hair and eyes that are of the same green color. I'm sure, Mom. I'm off, don't want to be late. Izuku gets up, grabs his school bag and reaches for the door. Izuku, wait. He opens it halfway before his mother stops him from walking out. What? He looks back at her impatiently. Inko took a moment to let her emotions build up to what she wants to tell him, her eyes looking down while a smile was on her face. I'm really proud of you, son. She manages to say. Izuku was left open-mouthed and blushing from that. You were always a brilliant boy. It was often difficult for you to believe, and I wish I could have done more to make you realize it. She had more to let out from her heart. But you made other people see it, so much that they wanted to help you grow on that brilliance, and you have, into a more gifted young man than you already were. And I know you're still set on becoming a hero. I hope UA does its part to provide you the opportunity. But wherever you end up, I believe in you. He didn't know how to take it at first. His mother was a kind woman for as long as he could remember, and the one person he could rely on to not mistreat him for his quirkless status. None of it was without any difficulties between them, however, specifically a lack of faith and support from her towards his dream of becoming a hero. He long accepted her reasons for it, but still would have cherished any that was given. And that's exactly what she was doing now. He could tell it was genuine too just by listening to her. He then returns a smile to his mother. "I'll see you soon, Mom." Izuku exits the apartment. Izuku makes it to UA, the school he's been visiting already for the past few months, so he has no trouble finding his way to the same classroom he spent most of his time here. Though this was the first he's had to arrive in the morning, so it did prompt him to make a rush for it once he's on school grounds. He reaches the large door to Class 1H and opens it to find the room already filled with his fellow classmates. Power Loader wasn't present, which means he was on time. Izuku enters and makes his way to the remaining empty table. All of the other students were conversing amongst themselves while waiting for the day to start, and Izuku recognized this moment too as an opportunity to socialize and form new relations with those he'd spend the next 3 years learning besides. Past experience, however, keeps him from being the one to approach, bringing him back only to the lifetime of harsh quirkless treatment that was a common occurrence in all of his previous schools, or any kind of social interaction. Despite the safer environment he was assured UA would provide, repeating the cycle was still a risk he was hesitant to take. The door opens and in walks Power Loader, a familiar presence he was glad to see. The rest of the class saw a pro hero enter the room, which got their attention. Following behind him was another student, a pink-haired girl with yellow pupils. "Come on, teach, at least tell me we're getting our hands on some baby making soon," she pleads to the hero. Certain words in her phrasing stood out for Midoriya, as it probably did for everyone else. "Baby making? Take a seat, Miss 𝗧𝗵𝗲." Power Loader was firm when he gives the instructions, pointing in the direction of the tables without turning to face her. She reluctantly obeys and walks towards the empty seat next to Midoriya. The girl simply sat there and looked ahead without paying him any attention. Not that she didn't seem uninterested to talk to him, more like she just wanted to get started. If Izuku wanted to talk to her instead, he didn't have time before Power Loader spoke to the whole class for the first time, after putting behind whatever it was that transpired earlier. "Good morning, everyone, and welcome to UA. I'm sure you're all excited to be here. I'm 𝗧𝗵𝗲, also known as Pro Hero Power Loader. As you imagined, you've been seeing a number of pro heroes as part of the faculty in this school, myself being in charge of the first-year support course, which also makes me your homeroom teacher." He was standing behind his desk on an elevated mechanical stand for the students to better see him, given his short stature. "We'll be heading out for orientation soon, so I'll keep this short and simple. Each of you has worked hard to make it here today, proving that you have an aptitude for mechanics and engineering, and are now ready to take it to next level by applying your skills into the world of pro heroes. Society as a whole relies on heroes for world stability. To that end, it has a tendency to picture heroes in glorifying images as some perfect force that could do anything with their quirks, especially when it comes to the higher-ranking heroes. If any of that was true, then there wouldn't be a pro out there carrying some tool for their work. No quirk is without limit, and while some are more versatile than others, there isn't a single quirk that's useful for anything you can think of. That's why support gears are around, built to alleviate the heroes of those limitations as much as possible. Needless to say, it'll be your jobs to provide that to the heroes, even during the time you spend here developing all of the knowledge and experience behind it. But if you think that just means building gadgets and gizmos, then you're wrong. Construction alone will only get you so far without working on the 3 essential aspects: innovation, creativity, and adaptability. As support course students, it is your responsibility to push the boundaries of what you can achieve. You are the inventors, the engineers, and the problem solvers who will shape the future of hero support. That being said, There will be some rules and restrictions while working in this classroom. Something I might have to stress out more than I thought I would. His statement clearly was directed to a particular person in the room, who was quick to respond. Hey, I came to this school to make babies. Why bother wasting time on anything else? The pink-haired girl next to him defends. Power Loader reluctantly left it at that, while Izuku wondered what it was all about. Not long afterwards, things went as imagined for a first day in high school. Power Loader led the class to an assembly of all first-year students, where Principal Nizu gave an introductory speech that congratulates all of the students for successfully entering UA and gives out all of the standard expectations throughout the following years. Once that had passed, everyone returned to their respective classrooms where teachers took the time to provide their students further layout of the year ahead of them, Class 1H included, along with other activities to familiarize the students to their learning environments. It all lasted until classes would be dismissed for lunch period. Midoriya, stick around for a sec? While his classmates were heading out, Izuku approached his teacher, who asked him to remain. So, how does it feel, kid? Coming here in uniform for the first time? Power Loader eagerly inquiries. It feels good. I know I've said this plenty of times, but I can never thank you enough for this, sensei. Izuku humbly expressed the gratitude that usually follows whenever the subject comes up. And I keep saying, it's because you had it in you to make it here. All I did was to clarify that. Anyway, a couple of things I wanted to tell you real quick. First, Nizu has agreed to let you plug Icarus into the school system on occasion, only under my supervision, of course. Izuku nods his head to the reasonable condition. Second, this finally arrived the other day. Power Loader pulls out a mechanical box from his desk drawer. He pushes a button on its side and the surface on top of it slides open to reveal a red glove within. Izuku the piece of fabric and looks at it with intrigue, having a good idea what this really was. This is the test sample for Miss Yaoyorozu's costume. If I recall, you mentioned that you kept touch with her, so I thought you might just meet up and get the testing out of the way. A practical suggestion, but Izuku couldn't help develop certain feelings at the thought of seeing said girl at the soonest. Knowing his teacher, he was suspecting something like that with amusement. Alright. Thank you, sensei. He quickly makes his way out of the classroom, closing the door behind him. Just when it looked like he could have a moment of peace. Hey, Greenie. He gets startled by someone's voice from behind, turning to find the pink-haired girl who's been sitting next to him. What's Icarus? That the name of your baby? She asks, indicating that she overheard his conversation with Power Loader. You mean inventions when you say baby, right? Izuku clarifies. Duh, what else would that mean? Just making sure. Anyway, Icarus is one of the archived projects Mayjima-sensei mentioned. I was coming here for some special training to get into the support course, and I was able to finish it. The name is an acronym for Interactive Computerized Analytical Research Information System. You mean you got to come here and make a baby before everyone else? And it can think and talk on its own. She got much closer to his personal space when asking that with complete excitement. Well, it's not the one I built myself. More like finish someone else's work, but yeah. He was taken back about from her sudden approach. You gotta show me. Well, we have lunch right now, and I don't think Power Loader will let us take it out of storage until after. That got her thinking. Good point. I know, we wait till the room's empty, go in and hack it open ourselves. Already figured out how this morning. Wait, what? Izuku had to inquire on what he heard. Had to when I showed up early to get a head start on making some babies. Teach was not happy about that. You hacked into the storage systems? You went that far to build something. No wonder Power Loader seemed irked with her when he arrived in class today, especially since he was in charge of the school's security systems, and that it was his classroom where a breach like that happened. I was surprised all the material was locked up to begin with. For a top hero school, you'd think they'd let the support class make babies at any time. She responds, showing no concern for her actions and the impact they'd have for her as a student on the first day. He simply wasn't sure how to respond to her tactless personality. After some talking and some effort with it, Izuku managed to convince her to settle down for lunch. The two ended up sitting together in the cafeteria, having food made by the school chef that had quality, though for Izuku, a much bigger treat was seeing a pro hero as the school chef, the cook hero. Lunch rush. He got to know more about her, starting with her full name being 𝗵𝗃, and that her quirk is called 𝗬𝗵, which basically enhances her vision to look at greater distances. Everything else was an expression of her passion for all things mechanical, industrial, or electrical, clearly outweighing his own for heroes, quirks, and technology. She got to know more about him in return, although when it came to a question of his quirk, he refused to answer. In today's world, if someone isn't comfortable with being open about their quirk, it's proper etiquette to respect their privacy. Izuku can finally use that to hide his lack of one, without a certain someone around to always let everyone know truth. Luckily, 𝗵𝗃 didn't mind, seeming more interested in how he got into the support course. So you only just started on the sweet path of tech parenthood, and just in time to enjoy it here of all places. Lucky you. Yeah, I'm honestly still surprised I made it this far in the time I had. Guess the way I see. Machines and quirks being similar helped me out more than I thought. Izuku explains. Not sure I can get behind that. Sounds like it makes total sense, but quirks are a one-time build with a one-track purpose. Not like the free-to-build, unlimited design, and awesome power of babies. May probably announces. I agree. Part of why I admire technology myself. Both have their own separate strengths, but, I actually saw something that inspired an idea I've thought a lot about. A way to possibly combine them. Izuku eagerly shares. Combine them? Babies and quirks? May asked curiously. Right. Oh wait, I can even show you. Izuku reached for the inner pocket of his uniform jacket and pulls out the glove given to him by his teacher. It doesn't look like much, but this glove is made of a specialized fiber that has someone's DNA mixed into it, their hair to be exact. That way their costume is kinda like another part of them, therefore compatible with their quirk. This one is for a new hero student who can create almost anything she wants from her body, but her clothes can get in the way of her creations from coming out of her skin. If this glove works out, then they should be able to just phase right through this material. Ever since I found out about this, I've believed that if quirks can be embedded in a costume, then maybe one day we could do the same for more complex items like technology in order to advance it in ways no one had seen before. For once after speaking with her, May doesn't give an immediate response, probably because of how unbelievable it's expected to be for what he described. I know it sounds more like a dream, but are you kidding? That would be one major upgrade. May bursts in loud joy that took Izuku by surprise. Babies with their own quirks. So simple an idea you don't realize the brilliance right away. And we're already a step towards it. No wonder you became a tech daddy so quickly. Oh, thanks. Why you make it sound like I was the first person to ever come up with the general idea. Izuku tried to show modesty. You might as well be if I didn't think it first. And you said this is for someone who can make anything she wants? Can she make babies too? May wanted to know more. I saw her taking the recommendation exam for the hero course, and she could make all sorts of devices to help her out. She really is incredible. Izuku openly expresses what he thinks of the individual in question. I'm flattered you'd think so of me. A response was given, and it didn't come from the girl sitting in front of him. When turning to 𝗓𝗏 instead, he finds the teenage girl that had indirectly received his praise. The recommended hero applicant he befriended a few months ago stood a few feet away from their table with her own tray of food in hand, a noticeably large amount on her plate. Why Yorozu? Hello. Izuku rose from his chair in her unexpected presence. His face turned red after she overheard him talking about her. Hello to you, Midoriya. I'm happy to see you in person again. Momo happily greets him. This was their second physical encounter, but since exchanging contacts from their first, Izuku was able to maintain consistent communication with her so that he may enjoy the experience of socializing with who he could mutually consider to be friends with, the first one after so many years of his life. That the whole thing was done remotely might have been a big help to him if he felt honest with himself, as well as the fact that Momo held the role of starting most of their conversations. Regardless, both of them did an adequate job of getting to know the other in that time. Some details more surprising than others, like the wealthy family she comes from. More importantly, they easily managed to find common interests between them, such as their fondness for quirks that has led to a number of intellectual discussions on the subject. These often included Izuku's continuous complimentation of her amazing quirk and some analytical advices for its use he was happy to provide, which was often followed by Momo's gratitude for his support, and times when she would admire him for being a superior mind whenever it came to quirks. I am happy to see you as well. While pondering on that statement, it crosses his mind that Momo is as he remembers her when they first meet, the differences being her dressed in the school uniform and her shortened hair that now reaches at the base of her neck, likely the result of donating the rest for the proposed Quirk fabric. In any case, Izuku couldn't look away from her at the moment, without realizing it. This the creation goddess you were just talking about? May blurts out in a manner that could cause embarrassment for him. I was just telling her about Quirk fabric and how I saw your quirk and thought it would suit you. Izuku gives the context of their conversation to avoid any misinterpreted ideas. I see. She's a classmate of yours, I take it? Momo refers to the other occupant at the table. May 𝗧𝗵𝗲, future head of 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Industries. Greenie was just saying how your quirk is a baby maker. She means technology when she says baby. Another quick clarification from Izuku on May's choice of wording. Oh. Yes, my quirk allows me to create any inorganic object I can think of, and after learning the required knowledge, that includes machinery as well. Momo confirms. You gotta show me. Oh wait, Greenie has that special glove for you. Put that on first. May says enthusiastically. Momo looks back at Izuku, who was taken unprepared for the haste of the moment, but still responded accordingly. G got it from Power Loader just before lunch. I meant to let you know later on. He presents the glove he holds to the person it was made for. Oh, wonderful. I would love to try it out now, if it's all right with you. Momo asked. Of course. Momo sets her tray on their table and takes the glove from him to put it on her left hand. Maybe start with something small and simple, to be on the safe side. Izuku suggests. Momo nods her head and proceeds. The glove had a speck of a glow coming from tip of the index finger, similar to every other occasion she's used her quirk. A small, thin piece of metal was then seen materializing from that glow. Her attention was on the point of the finger where it originates, and all she could determine was that the fabric was completely unaffected after she created something through it without any hindrance. It worked. I can't believe it. Momo was amazed that the fabric lived up to its design and offered no resistance to her quirk, like no other clothing had done before. That's great. Izuku was as happy with the result. Now make a baby. Doesn't matter what. I just want to see the magic. May throws at her. Momo was glad to go for a second testing and complies to her request. This time, the glow covered the palm, and a much larger object came from it, an ordinary flashlight, the first thing that came to mind to build. This second attempt with a bigger item had the same desired outcome as the first, and to demonstrate its authenticity, she even uses it to flash the table. You are a goddess. May had to make that proclamation after seeing it firsthand. Silently, Izuku had to agree with her. I'll be sure to let Power Loader know the next time I see him, and he'll tell the support company to go ahead with the rest of your costume. It will take longer though for them to complete. You may not receive it for a while. He informs her. I don't mind that at all. Thank you so much for this, Midoriya. Momo gives him a courteous bow. It's my pleasure. Izuku was pleasantly surprised for the gesture. Ierozu gave back the glove, and unexpectedly sat down at their table, choosing to enjoy her lunch with them. Not that either had objected to it, least of all Izuku thinking to do so. So, how was your first day in the hero course? He asks her. Momo lets out a breath to the inquiry. Eventful, to say the least. Our homeroom teacher had a skip orientation to conduct physical evaluations this morning. They were the same as what's standard in the education system, only these had the purpose of using our quirks in them. Momo answered. That sounds exciting. Izuku believes. One part of her sentence though stood out to him. Wait, your teacher skipped orientation intentionally? When he thinks back to it, there was a number of empty seats that didn't go unnoticed during the event. The principal even made an amusing comment to point it out. The school allows the teachers a free rein on how they run their classes, and 𝐼𝐴𝐺𝐿𝐴𝐺 takes advantage of that to make the most of the 3 years we have to spend here. In his mind, orientation would be too trivial to waste time over. She explains. Man, why can't our teach think that way when it comes to making babies? May complains. I guess that sort of thing is expected for a hero school. They are meant to prepare students for a career meant to save and protect lives. Izuku adds. I believe that as well. Still, I can't help but feel that ours went too far after expelling one of us. Momo states with no enthusiasm for that occurrence. Someone in your class got expelled? On the first day? Izuku was shocked to hear it. Aizawa wasn't pleased to hear that any of us weren't taking the hero course seriously enough, so he decided that whoever ended with the lowest overall score would be expelled for having no potential, as he puts it. Honestly, I thought the whole thing was a ruse to better motivate everyone to push themselves, but I was wrong. Momo elaborates. Sucks for that kid. Mei comments. Aizawa? He's their homeroom. Most of the UA staff that were pro-heroes with a teaching position, Izuku has had an opportunity to recognize in the time prior his enrollment. Among those heroes, Shota Aizawa was the one he knew very little of, apart from the fact that he's an underground hero, so his hero identity being kept in the dark is to be expected. Everything else came from his own impression of the man, a stoic and intimidatingly strict teacher, and backing that impression was a particular hearsay of his deeds at UA, of how he expelled an entire class. Izuku wasn't willing to believe it was anything more than that, until now hearing that an expulsion was done to a student on their first day. The real concerning part, however, wasn't in this teacher's capability, but in his position at the school. If he's one of the homeroom teachers for the first-year hero course, then he's gonna have a major influence on his transition to that course, a man that doesn't appear to hold back in removing those already there. Midoriya. Momo's call breaks him out of his nerve-wracking thoughts. Realizing that she must think he was out of it, he immediately comes up with an answer. Oh, sorry. It's just, getting into UA is difficult enough. Staying here being as difficult, finding that out just makes you think. I know what you mean. Knowing the possibility has me worried about protecting my place in the hero course. Then again, Aizawa's action may have been unfair, but his argument was that it's a hero's job to fight the unfairness of the world, and I can't really dispute it. Momo explains. Anyway, I'm sure he has the best intentions for his students in his own way, and I doubt the teacher for your class has any reason to be as strict. She then reassures the non-hero students. That much can be believable to Izuku, but pondering back to his earlier thoughts, Aizawa will still be someone to deal with on his path. The second day of school was naturally more productive than the first when students would be in the work, giving Izuku much to convey to his mother while having dinner. You're not working with anything dangerous in that class, are you? Inko shows motherly concern for her son's well-being. No, of course not, Mom. Besides, there's plenty of advanced safety features for the support course. Shouldn't be anything to worry about. Izuku answers a little quickly. At least, as long as 𝗧𝗵𝗲 doesn't get carried away again. Recalling a certain part of today's events he leaves out, when said girl was too quick to invent something that it somehow caused an explosion. No one got seriously hurt, thankfully, though her enthusiasm to carry on like it's part of the process gave the class something to fear in the days to come. Izuku most of all is the one seated closest to her. And just when he thought that explosions were something he could avoid for the time being. That's good to hear. Inko was relieved and continues her questioning. So your regular subjects are done in the first half of the day, while your main classes are done in the other? Basically, that's how it's scheduled for every course in UA, including the hero classes. Speaking of, they had their first hero lesson today, and for Class 1A it was battle training. Oh my, so soon in their lessons. I think it was more to see where they stand in their current abilities. But you'll never guess that the teacher in charge was none other than All Might. Izuku couldn't wait to mention the involvement of the #1 hero at his school with the thrill that was kept built up in him. Really? So he is actually teaching at UA. That must be very exciting for you, honey. Inko was happy for her son. I know, but that's not even the best part. At the end of the day, Power Loader allowed me to download all the recordings of the hero lessons today onto Icarus. I can finally put it to work now. Once dinner had concluded, Izuku had eagerly retreated to his room so that he may get on with the task he had been looking forward to undertake since his departure for home. On his desk was the specialized laptop for Icarus to run on. Opening the device and pressing some buttons have turned it on so as to awaken his AI companion. Greetings, Midoriya. Are we to begin analysis of the uploaded data? Greetings to you as well, Icarus. And yes, I would like to get started on that. Please pull up the file for the training exercise done by Class 1A. Following the voice command, a window opens up with information regarding the exercise in question. The requested item is now open. File consists of a description of the exercise, as well as visual and audio recordings of the performances of the individual students. Izuku took the time to read the description out of curiosity. Combat scenario. Villains are in possession of a nuclear weapon they have hidden within their hideout. Heroes are to infiltrate, defeat the villains, and secure the weapon. Instructions. Students will be paired in groups of 2, determined by drawing lots. Makes sense. Heroes have to work with other heroes on the spot sometimes. Can't always choose who with. Each exercise will have 2 groups facing each other, also determined by lots, as either the hero team or villain team, in the building designated as the training area where hero team will compete to reach the weapon, whereas villain team will compete to guard the weapon. All students will be provided capture tape. Rules. Each exercise will have a total duration of 15 minutes. Villain team will have 5 minutes of preparation. Hero team may not enter building in that time. Villain team can move the weapon anywhere within the building, but it must remain unhidden. If a student successfully ties their capture tape anywhere on an opposing student, the captured student is eliminated. Either team may win if both members of the opposing team are captured. Hero team may win if at least one member comes in contact with the weapon. Villain team may win if time runs out. It all seems simple enough, though Izuku would argue that the teams playing as the villains could have their own scenario where they're the heroes having to defend a valuable object from the opposing team as the villains, something to show that everyone is learning an essential part of hero work from either role. Now, can you please pull up the list of profiles for the students in Class 1A? Another window appears that had the requested item. The members of Class 1A were all displayed in a list of full names, alongside information of their respective quirks that was made available to the support course for working relations between both classes in the future. The requested item is now open. Thank you. Now please run the first recording, and while it's playing out, analyze the students within them and upload the data to the corresponding names on the profile list based on the set factors of their performance. Acknowledged. Playing recordings of exercise number 1. Izuku could only observe the video and play while Icarus does its work, and he had nothing but joy in the process, seeing hero students dressed in their costumes and using their quirks in confrontation with each other. Best of all was the sound of All Might's voice in the audio, as he would remotely guide everyone throughout the lesson. A dream come true that others were living in his eyes, making him happy for these hero students, while resurfacing his own aspiration into fulfilling that dream for himself. The video came to its end, and Icarus had updated all the data it could gather on the participating students into the profile list. This process was repeated with all the other recordings, meaning more quirks and costumes for Izuku's entertainment. Some matches stood out more than others, and they each involved someone that was already familiar to him. In one battle, Izuku got to witness the amazing quirk of his new friend, Momoyorozu, who won her match as a villain with the time to have set up traps she created. She didn't have a costume though, wearing instead a school uniform for physical training, which was to be expected since they only recently made the order for her Quirk fabric costume. The student she was paired with was left alone to guard the bomb and didn't have any opportunities to show what he could do, but since the class was down one student, he volunteered to go again in a later match, pairing up with a pink-skinned girl. His quirk was revealed to be an interesting mind-controlling power. The other outstanding matches provided more shock than intrigue. The first was when Shoto Todoroki, who he remembers specifically as a son of Endeavor, managed to encase the whole building in ice, just minutes after their match began, a feat similar to what he saw at the recommendation exam. The villain team were helplessly frozen in place when Todoroki simply walked towards the bomb to touch it, winning the match in the shortest time out of all of them. Then he melted all the ice away in the same speed. As far as quirks go, this one is amongst those that could easily be described as a force of nature. Finally, the most familiar of them, and the one that was nerve-wracking for him, was the match that his lifelong friend took part in. That he was a part of a hero class at UA comes as to no surprise to anyone that knows him, least of all to Izuku. Seeing him now, however, only reminds him that his pursuit for a spot in the hero course would eventually cross their paths in school, and past experience makes a clear picture of how that'll go down. The way he's performed in this exercise was no help either, seeing him unleash his explosive quirk on the opposing hero team when confronting them directly, now having more freedom of quirk usage than Izuku has ever seen in his lifetime. The student who stood to face him had a quirk that appeared to make his body invulnerable enough to prolong the fight and give more to show of his friend's quirk. Some might argue too much, after using one of his large gauntlets that came with his costume to fire a concentrated explosion with a destructive force greater than any he's given before, causing significant damage to the building. The other student was able to dodge a direct hit, thankfully, and All Might firmly instructs not to repeat this action. The exercise went on until time ran out, ending with the villain team winning. Unlike the others, this one gave Izuku much to dread. All videos have been analyzed. From the data obtained, I have determined a minimum of 3 stun-ins with a margin of consideration that exceed all others. The AI gave its assessment after processing all of the recordings. He didn't doubt the 3 mentioned were the same he thought of the most, but didn't interrupt. First is Shoto Todoroki. His quirk demonstrates the highest factors in power as well as range of effect, possibly attributed through lineage as his father is the hero currently ranked as number 2, Flame Hero in 𝗵𝗃𝗲. There is no indication he had physically exerted himself in the effort to encase the building in ice, or the elimination of it afterwards. Next is Katsuki Bakugo. More of that dread being brought up at the mention of his friend's name. The explosions produced from his quirk possess a high capability for destructive force, utilized through close-range offensive means, combined with an effective 𝗵𝗃𝗲 maneuverability by having his body propelled with the same force. Tactics displayed suggests a high level of control and precision in the use of his quirk, despite the aggression that seems to be a driving factor of his personality. The gauntlets that are part of his hero costume appear to be support gears that allow for an enhanced offensive attack. A pretty accurate breakdown for Katsuki and Izuku's mind. The part about his maneuverability was something new to consider, and those gauntlets were a new height of worry when it came to him. He didn't think that the hardened student would have been able to come out unharmed if he got hit by the blast. If it had been anyone else, it likely would have been lethal. No Kaken would know to go that far. He wants to be a hero as much as I do, and he wouldn't do anything jeopardize that. He even said as much before firing. Plus, in the sports festival, hero students wouldn't be allowed to use support gears unless they were needed, so I don't really have to worry about them anyway. Third would be Momo Yaoyorozu. Though her quirk isn't oriented for direct combat purposes, it exceeds the quirks of all others in her class in the factors of versatility and practicality, a high capacity to adapt to potentially all manner of situations by means of producing the essentially resources. Use of her quirk may also indicate a high level of intellect if her range of productivity requires knowledge of the items she creates. On that, he could only agree with the AI. The other 2 were powerful and straightforward, whereas Yaoyorozu's came with endless possibilities. Add in her own intelligence that he was very much aware of already, and dealing with her would be tricky. That's as if Izuku couldn't avoid confronting her at the sports festival, which he hopes to do. Of course, he feels that way for all 3, though unbeknownst to him, not exactly for the same reasons when it comes to her. With those aside, Icarus proceeded to break down the gathered data with all other students in Class 1A. After that was done, he moved on with the recordings of Class 1B's lesson. Day 3 at UA began a little hectic. When arriving at the front gate, it was to find a large crowd of news reporters and cameramen in the way. Like every student trying to go about their day, Izuku couldn't get past the gate without having the media persistently uncover whatever answers they can get for the same subject that attracted all of them here in the first place, All Might's presence at the school. Izuku's wasn't prepared when they had their sights on him, so he used the first excuse that came to his head and just ran into the building. Homeroom went on as normal, with one task in particular that Power Loader gave Class 1H, which was for them to decide who would take the roles of class representative and vice representative. How they would choose was left for the students of the class to figure out on their own. It ended up being done with one classmate's suggestion of a friendly competition, where everyone would display the work they used for their entrance exam, then vote for the best one. When they all got to see each other's inventions, 𝗏𝗵𝗲 felt the need to point out that Icarus wasn't amongst them, which revealed Izuku's creation of AI to the rest of the class from her unfiltered words, along with the fact that he didn't even have any engineering skills a year ago before his special training. They were all impressed to hear it, but he wasn't ready for that kind of attention no matter how positive it was. He argues that Icarus shouldn't count for this as it wasn't part of anything he starred himself, both to keep it fair and to avoid getting either class positions he never expects to receive. Not only did he lack the confidence because of his past social experiences, he didn't want anything that might take time away from his personal project for the sports festival. Luckily, he didn't have to worry after 2 of his classmates won those positions. School proceeded from there on, all the way to lunch period where a routine was forming that puts Izuku at a shared table with Mei. "You didn't care about being class rep?" Izuku inquires her. "Sounds like work to take away precious baby time. If someone's gotta do it, then I'd rather be a stay-at-home mama." Mei answers in her usual manner. "Anyway, I really liked how we all showed off each other's baby, but I still don't get why you didn't put up Icarus. Your other baby was cute too, but parents should treat their children equally." Well, it's like I said, everyone else had one invention to show and it was what they build on their own. Plus, I only finished putting 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝑒 software together. I'm not the one who initially built it. So what? The other guy started the work, but he left his baby for adoption. You're the one who picked it up, nurtured it, and got it to talk. He only helped give birth to it. You're the daddy that's doing all the real work. You gotta learn to take pride in that. Mei tries to convince him. I guess you may have a point there. It's not an easy feat, but her words were sinking into him for consideration. All of a sudden, alarms begin to fill the air with loud noise. Warning! Level 3 security breach. All students, please exit the building in an orderly fashion. What's that all about? Mei wonders, while Izuku recalls when they've covered UA's security protocols in the orientation. Wait, I remember. It means someone got past the school barrier. The reaction to this alarm was all the students in the cafeteria following the instruction to exit the building, only it was far from an orderly fashion, as they all fell to a massive panic when they ran into an unavoidable cluster while struggling to get past the door. Izuku was no exception to the crowded passage, and getting helplessly shoved from all sides in the mob. Despite all the chaos, Izuku was able to notice one dark blue-haired student flying above the rest, albeit with some uncontrolled backward somersaults. He crashed onto the wall that was in his way and ended up standing on the exit sign of where the crowd was going through. His action already got some attention, but it was his voice that got everyone to stop and listen to him. "Listen up, everything's okay?" It was then that Izuku recognized this student to be 𝗍𝗄𝐴 from Class 1A, the one whose quirk gives him engines in his calves to move at inhuman speeds. "It's just the media outside. There's absolutely nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. We're UA students. We need to remain calm and prove we're the best of the best." It took little to no time for his clarification to convince them of the lack of any danger. Students next to the windows looked out and pointed out the police arriving to deal with the trespassing media on school ground, further reassuring everyone of the situation and letting all the panic to just vanish. Izuku had more of an admiration for the one who made that happen, now believing he'll make a fine hero someday. Talks of the lunch period ruckus extended into the time students were gathering in their homeroom classes. Those of Class 1H were freely chatting about that particular subject while waiting for their teacher. Everyone has also changed into their attires for the more labored work that comes with mechanical engineering, a mix of casual clothing and various work-related items. Izuku was wearing a dark blue shirt, protective gloves and boots, and a gray utility suit with the top left loose and wrapped around his waist, a style that was commonly adopted amongst his classmates. "Sorry I'm late, everyone." The door slides open to reveal 𝗵𝗃 arriving, who makes his way to his desk with a slight expression of annoyance. After sitting down is when he lets the classroom know the reason why it took him longer to show up. "You probably heard by now that the media was the cause of the commotion from lunch earlier, leaving me to inspect how a breach of security like that occurs as part of my duties at the school." "Mijoima-sensei, how did they get in? Doesn't UA have some of the best security systems in the country?" One large student with a mutation that made his skin in the same texture as stone asks that concerning question. "I guarantee you that remains true, and that maintaining the level of standard is a top priority to the staff at UA, especially in response to moments like these. One of them just had the right kind of quirk to pull off something bold is all." 𝗵𝗃 was quick to put the whole class at ease with this fact. "Whatever the case, it's for the police to worry about now. We've got work to do." The classroom proceed with the practical portion of their studies, evidently some far more eager than others, if not for a pink-haired girl in particular to demonstrate. The same girl who the other students felt a little nervous to work alongside with after what happened the other day. Everyone was using this time to carry on with their personal projects, which for Izuku meant interacting with his computerized companion, going over the accumulated data thus far to figure out the most effective type's gadgetry to his advantage. So how's Icarus coming along? A surprise question coming from his side turns his head to find the teacher snuck up on him while working. Great sensei. It's managed to compile a lot of data for both hero classes from those exercises. Izuku happily answers. Stuff on self-improvement, or ways for you to counter for what's ahead? Both actually. First time I've used Icarus the other night, and I've covered a lot of ground so fast. That was the idea from the beginning, but still. Midoriya's own inputs have contributed to my assessments by 43%. The AI complements his programmer, though indirectly, with this added detail. Thank you, Icarus. You are welcome, Midoriya. Anyway, I'm using what I have now to come up with new inventions that are best suited for me in the upcoming festival. I think I'm off to a good start, but I could use some more data to analyze. Maybe some basic information on the rest of the first-year classes while I'm at it. Izuku states, not a problem, but I can do you one better. How would you feel about going out for more on-the-field analysis? Power loader offers. On the field? Izuku didn't expect such a prospect to be given to him. The act of gathering data while physically present within the time and location of the subject of analysis as it occurs. Icarus, though the question of the term required a definition. Reason I'm asking is because I got to talk with 1A's homeroom teacher while checking that breach and found the perfect opportunity coming up soon. Seeing the hero students up close and in action. The second day following the eventful media break and couldn't have come fast enough for Izuku. As promised, he gets to forgo the normal main lessons for today after lunch for a very special occasion, one that involves meeting with a group of people he was thrilled to see in person, and the very reason why he was rushing to not risk being late at the designated meeting point. Taking also into consideration was the duffel bag of some equipment he planned on using, accompanied with some special eyewear with an earpiece attached. His destination became easy to spot from the sight of the people already there. It was them. The students of Class 1A, dressed in their hero costumes. Seeing them was cause for Izuku to stop running and look at them from a distance to admire their heroic appearances. He may have already familiarized himself with who they were and what they looked like in their costumes in his previous analysis, but he's had a lifetime to distinguish between the thrills of seeing heroes in videos and in real life. He continues his approach on a gentler pace, wanting to make a good impression with the kind of students he admired the most. He was noticed by the one that was the closest to him, who spared him the effort to start the greeting process. Hi there. It was one of the fewer female students who had shoulder-length auburn hair and an eyes, welcoming him in a pleasantly filled manner. If he remembers correctly, she's the one whose quirk allows her to nullify gravity. Her costume was a black full bodysuit with some pale pink formation, seemingly space-themed. Hello. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'm from Class 1H. He find more opportunity to talk with the opposite gender. Oh yeah, we heard someone was joining us on our rescue training. My name is 𝗧𝗪𝗏 𝗔𝗪𝗏. It's nice to meet you. She identifies as the name he rightfully assumed. It's nice to meet you too. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you in training. We'll have to do our best then. So is this for your own special train? She inquires. Something like that. I'm here to gather data for a project I started a while ago. I actually saw the battle training you all had with you. With that one word, all feelings and expression Izuku had turned to anxious worry. His head was drawn to the very familiar sound of that term and found the only person in the world who could make it. In the excitement to meet new people involved in heroics, he overlooked the fact that the circumstance would come with seeing an old friend as well, who was not any more enthusiastic about this encounter, by the rage-filled demeanor he displayed as he walked closer to him. Standing before Izuku was the spiked blonde-haired teen he's known for as long as he could remember in the costume he's been given for his heroic endeavor, a black combat suit consisting of a sleeveless tank top with an orange X around it, baggy pants held by a belt that carries grenades, and knee-high combat boots with orange soles. It had the accessories of a black jagged mask surrounding his eyes with two flare-shaped panels protruding from each end, a rectangular metal neck brace, and of course those large grenade-like gauntlets to enhance his explosions. 𝗧𝗪𝗏, it's nice to see you again. Why, you have an amazing sea costume too. Izuku gave him his usual friendly greeting in some nervously driven effort to avoid some of the tension between them. What the fuck are you doing here? Don't you have toys? Play with it in the tech nerd class? Katsuki responds with unbridled aggression, loud enough to get everyone else's attention. Another of the hero students reacts from overhearing him. 𝗵𝘃𝗲, your attitude is reflecting badly on our entire class. Aizawa-sensei gave specific instructions against such things for our guest student. Izuku heard that stern voice before, coming from Tenya Ida, who wore a one-piece suit with various armor pieces of a pale silver color, including a full facial helmet he held in his arm while revealing the glasses he normally wears, and adorned with metal pipes as thematic to his quirk. Shut it, Four Eyes. This is personal business between me and the nerd. Katsuki turns to retaliate. Calm down, Bakubro. Some of the others tried to get involved, such as the red-haired student with his chest left bare, gear-shaped shoulder pads, a wire guard on his face, and a half-cape around his baggy pants with a red R in the center of the belt. Yeah, what's your beef with this guy? Asking that was the teen boy with whose quirk places 2 round formations on his elbows, a skin-tight bodysuit of black and white design, and a yellow helmet shaped like a tape dispenser that had a black facial visor. This worthless loser not knowing his place as always. Thinking he can have anything to do with heroes, his pathetic way of saying he's better than me. Katsuki points to Izuku, causing him to flinch. Why would you believe that? Another familiar voice was heard. Momo made her presence to the argument in Izuku's defense, dressed in the physical training uniform again, and not looking pleased with how Katsuki is acting towards him. For once, people were standing up for him against Katsuki, and that includes one of his newest friends. It felt nice. For the short time it'll last anyway. Katsuki will reveal the inevitable, and their opinions of him will change. Izuku knew this all too well. And why is his involvement in heroics something to take offense over? Momo asks further. Because he's even worse than any other extra who think they're worth anything. He's fucking quirkless. And there it was. It couldn't have remained a secret forever, but Izuku hoped that its moments of uncovering since coming to UA would have been on his terms, when he'd first prove himself in ways that might not let it affect how people see him as it did before. In the place that mattered most to him, Katsuki destroyed all chances of that without mercy. He could feel all eyes trained on him now. With that cursed knowledge, despite his own not making any contact while looking down in sorrow. Although the message finally went through your skull when you went and joined the Grease Monkeys. So again, why the fuck are you here, Deku? Katsuki reinforces that question. Obviously, you didn't hear that he's the one that's tagging along with us. Another of the female students retorts, who had the earphone jacks protruding from her earlobes, and whose costume was a simple black outfit with a leather jacket over a salmon-colored shirt, and boot with stereos built into them. If anyone else was going to talk more in the conversation, Izuku didn't expect it to be anything other than them siding with Katsuki after learning the truth, as history has proven time and again. Even less that they'd still be willing to act in his defense. And yet that appears to be the case. Alright. I am collecting data on the hero classes for one of my inventions, and I was told I could accompany your class for that today. Izuku quickly adds. To say, some excuse you cooked up to nerd out on all our quirks, and now you got some stalker tech to do it. If you're referring to his analytical skills, then it's to everyone's benefit. Clearly you're more familiar with him than I am, 𝗵𝘃𝗲, so you should know about his amazing abilities to discern quirks. I've seen enough of it to know how invaluable he would be for hero work. Momo provides more to support Izuku, who was more happy in the fact she would for him, meaning that she might see him no differently than before his quirkless status came out. The only thing I need to know is that this worthless wannabe has always been too pathetically desperate for people to think he can be the one thing he has no right to be. And as if real heroes need help from this kind of weakling to get better. Katsuki retorts, then turns back to a flinching Izuku. You can fool them, but not me, Deku. I won't let you forget it. That's enough. Before the whole argument is stirred further, a new intercepting voice takes over. Everyone was drawn to the adult making his way towards the students, a man with long messy black hair and look that can be defined as worn out, clad in an all-black outfit with a utility belt and a lengthy scarf wrapped around his neck. Izuku didn't need anyone to tell him that this was their homeroom teacher. 𝗵𝘃𝗲, can't say I'm surprised you'd ignore what I said about being on your best behavior and act like the professional you aspire to be when you'd have a spectator, but I at least thought you had a higher standard than to attack him unprovoked, personal history aside. he says to the explosive teen impassively. Therefore, you can refrain from speaking to him or of him while we go on with the training, unless you'd rather sit it out and waste my precious nap time in detention and remedial training later on. This shouldn't be anything new to him. Somewhere in his mind he knew that, but it was. A teacher is protecting him from Katsuki, showing no favor for the boy with a powerful quirk over the one with no quirk at all, no doubt aware of the fact. What's more, instead of reacting back with aggression, Katsuki remained silent. Clearly not of his own desire when Izuku looked back at him and saw him stunned, then changes to an expression of reluctance. That was followed by an even more uncharacteristic gesture of simply walking away in agitated silence. Midoriya, hearing his own name from the teacher, broke him away from staring at a historical moment that was Katsuki Bakugo backing down. Though the man had protected him in the last few minutes, he was still the one teacher at this school who didn't want to give any bad impression of himself, so he couldn't help being nervous for him now. Aizawa-sensei, thank you for having me. I promise not to interfere with the lesson, Izuku says anxiously while bowing to the man. See that you don't, and to make the most of your time here while you're at it. A simple response given in return, and Aizawa walks past him. Get everyone on the bus, he instructed the class representatives. Izuku raised himself and watched him leave. Good day to you. Someone else offered their greeting to Izuku. I'm Tenya Ida, Vice Representative of Class 1A. I believe you are acquainted with my superior, he introduces before directing attention to Momo. Hello, Midoriya. She welcomes him casually, no different from previous occasions, to Izuku's eternal gratitude. 𝐒𝐩𝐢𝐫. I'm glad to have you with us today. I am sorry about Bakugo though. We didn't expect him to react so suddenly like that. I too would like to express my sincerest apology for our colleague's highly rude and unbefitting conduct. Tenya adds. Oh no, don't worry about Kaken. I've known him for most of my life and that's normal. The first time Izuku has had to explain that to people who weren't like-minded with Katsuki. His personality and behavior are beneath what I'd consider normal, far less for someone who is pursuing the noble title of hero. Tenya counters displeasingly over the exact nature of those things. If you've known him for a long time, then I find it concerning if that's the way he treats you. It's not the sort of thing you should have to endure, Midoriya. Momo tried to affirm for his well-being. Really, I don't mind any of it. Bakugo might not give the impression, but I just know he will make a great hero. Oh, that reminds me. I've been meaning to tell you what a good job you did with the media situation the other day. Izuku compliments what Tenya did during that whole ordeal. Yes, thank you. I simply acted accordingly to quell the chaos any number of students would have if they'd only looked out the window. Tenya explains with modesty. Anyway, I hate to cut this conversation short, but we really should be heading out now, he informs Momo, who nods her head. They both got the class to load onto the bus that's been parked next to the class. Ida made a suggestion to organize seating arrangements by everyone's designated number, except that it wasn't applicable to the open layout of its interior, much to his disappointment, so they each picked a seat freely. It was during the ride that other students began to socialize with Izuku. He still had some getting used in talking with new people, and in this case he was more nervous for when they might ask about him being quirkless. And yet, no one had brought it up. They were talking to him like there was nothing wrong about it, an experience he was enjoying from many others, aside from his mother and the faculty member he knew at UA, who all took it so quickly. Momo revealed how they were already familiar with each other, and she eagerly compliments his prowess for quirk analysis in the process. I'm not exaggerating. Midoriya has such a driven mind for studying the nature and possibilities of quirks unlike anyone else. She praises him to her classmates. I don't know if I'd go that far. Izuku humbly backs from the statement. If Yaozu thinks so, then it's probably not that far off. You're in the support course too, so you have to be pretty smart. The girl sitting next to him adds her opinion. She had long dark green hair and traits resembling frog-like features, with a bodysuit of a green and black design that emphasized her frog appearance. Thank you. Tsuyu, right? Call me Tsu, she insists. If you're in support, then you must already know about all of our quirks. The red-haired teen sitting in the same row of seat states, earlier confirmed to be Ijiro Kirishima. I do. I think everyone in this class has a wonderful quirk. Izuku replies. Yeah, but only some are special in comparison. Wouldn't blame you if thought my hardening quirk wasn't one of them. It's useful in a fight and I can smash bad guys pretty easily with it, but not much else to it. Not at all flashy and powerful. He demonstrates his quirk when he raises his arm up and transforms it into its hardened state. That not true. You're definitely pro-material with a quirk like that. 𝐒𝐻𝐿 counters. You really think so? Absolutely. You might think your quirk looks simplistic, but I came up with a theory when I gave it some thought. Were you ever told how your body hardens? The science behind it, I mean. He asks him. Not sure I ever looked into that. I just knew what I did from experience. You got an idea. I'd have to verify it first, but if I'm right, then it could help you to do more with your quirk. Izuku explains. Oh yeah, I'd like to hear it. Kirishima wanted to find out more, but Aizawa interrupts the conversation before anything was shared. Listen up, we're here. I appreciate whatever help you can provide Midoriya, but it's for another time. The bus pulls over to the front entrance of a large building with a dome-shaped roof. The students and teacher got out of the vehicle and were all meet with an individual that had been waiting for their arrival. Welcome Class 1A. Someone dressed in a puffy spacesuit, with a black helmet and yellow boots, stood before everyone to greet them, her voice sounding mechanical through her helmet. It's the space hero, 13. She's well known for being a rescue hero that saved tons of people from disasters across the world. Izuku excitingly informs out loud who the new pro-hero was. Woohoo! 13's one of my favorite heroes. Ochako showed her own excitement for the presence of an admired hero. I can't wait to show all of you what's inside. I understand there's also a student here from 1H. OT, that would be me, 13 sensei. Izuku lets her know. You may not be participating in the exercise, but I bet you're in for a treat from just seeing what this place has in store. 13 tells him before they move on. The class follows her into the building, and not long once they set foot inside were they amazed from the mere sight of it. It was all one open space, above and beneath the level of the entrance, with various sections of structures all around, each of them clearly built to simulate the environment of a specific natural disaster. One of the students completes it with a resemblance to an amusement park. Everyone stops in front of a large blue gate with a set of stairs leading down to the base of the building. Shipwrecks, landslides, fires, windstorms. Whatever disaster you can think of, this training facility was built to prepare you for them. It's called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or the USJ for short. 13 explains. USJ? Isn't that the same initials for Universal Studios Japan? Izuku thinks to himself. Hey, shouldn't All Might be here by now? Don't tell he booked an interview instead. Aizawa approaches 13 to inquire. Actually, it's something else. She answers him, but makes sure it's not for the students to hear. That's right, All Might was also going to be here. I can't believe I forgot about that. If the teachers don't want us to know why he didn't show up, it must be because he exhausted his quirk. I hope he's doing okay. Izuku surmises as one of the few that is aware of the #1 hero's secret. Let's just carry on with the lesson. Aizawa responds. Excellent. Before we begin, I want to cover something first. If you already know me as a hero, then no doubt you recognize my quirk as well, Black Hole, which lets me suck up anything and turn it into dust. 13 informs. Your quirk can effectively remove all kinds of rubble in order to save people from disasters. Izuku clarifies. That's true, however. The people I rescue can also fall victim to its effects if I'm not careful. The class was taken back at her comment. My quirk is an example of those that despite the good I can do with it, there's always a potential for danger. I could take away life just as easily as I've used it to rescue. Some of you also have powers that fall under this broad category. We tend to overlook this side of quirks because of the commonality behind this, and how society has always certified and heavily regulated quirks for mainly these kinds of reasons. You have to remember that any misstep in using your quirk for whatever task, even in saving someone's life, can lead to deadly results. This past week should have given you all a better understanding of your quirks and what you can do with them. Aizawa's fitness tests revealed your limits, and All Might's battle training helped you to see the damage you can inflict onto others. Carry what you've learned over to today's lesson. Here you will learn to use your quirks for the sole purpose of saving lives. You won't be using it against each other, only to help. After all, that essence of being a hero, ensuring the safety of others. She spoke to all of the students when giving her lecture on the importance of safe quirk usage in the line of duty. Izuku took in every word, even while knowing that it didn't really apply to him, but was nonetheless inspired by them. Right, now with that out of the way. Suddenly after Aizawa spoke, the set of lights from around the perimeter of the building were going off. Izuku and the other students were surprised from that. Midoriya, I'm detecting a surge of energy approximately 1.6 kilometers ahead of you and 13 feet below. Izuku's attention was drawn to his AI communicating remotely to him through the earpiece. Looking into that general direction revealed something far more astonishing. A dark formation was appearing in front of the water fountain at the center of the USJ, with the space surrounding it looking like it was swirling around. Don't move. 13. To protect the students. Aizawa commands rapidly at the sight of the formation. Wait, what's that thing? Kirishima calls it out and everyone else was now staring at it. More shocking than its appearance was the fact that after reaching a certain size, people began to walk out of it. Most of them has heteromorphic quirks, and combined with their attires, they all gave an impression that could easily be assumed as something sinister. Izuku used the zooming feature of his eyewear to get a closer look at them, and notices two that stood closer to the portal after walking out of it. The first was a lanky figure with messy grayish-blue hair. Nothing else was worth noting, other than the severed hands that are gripped around him, including one covering his face. Standing beside him was something of a monster, a large humanoid with a muscular body, pitch-black skin with several scars, an exposed brain where its eyes are located, and a beak-like mouth full of sharp teeth. Its only attire was beige pants reaching to skull-shaped knee pads. It's some kind of portal, Izuku states. A portal? Is that part of exercise? Kirishima inquired further. Stay back. Aizawa shouts before any of them takes a step closer. This is real. Those are villains. The pro-hero teacher breaks the situation loud and clear to the students. None of them were left any feelings from it but the anxiety that comes with this turn of events. Izuku could only stare at the infiltrators with dread. If actual villains are here on UA grounds, then they've come with the only likely intent of threatening the class, himself included. They already outnumbered the only two heroes that were real pros. Will they be able to handle this? In the mountain zone, Midoriya panics and runs from a large muscular villain with a full facial metal helmet to dodge a downward punch thrown onto him. He got closer to the two female students on his side. All three held a weapon produced from Miro's quirk to better fend off their attackers, with her using a metal staff while the others had bladed weapons. For better use of quirk, she kept her jacket unzipped and rolled up at the sleeves for more skin exposure. No offense, Green, but maybe just stay behind us if you can't do much in a fight. Jiro tells him bluntly. Izuku tries talk back on her comment but gets cut off by the same villain attempting another attack, forcing him to dodge again. Jiro extends one of her earphone jacks to plug it into one of her boots with built-in stereos as support gears, then fires a sonic blast at the villain to push him back, as well any other villain getting caught in the blast. Izuku stared at the use of the sound-based quirk in awe that he doesn't immediately notice another villain running at him with a blade in both hands. By the time he does, Yorozu pulls out a vial she created with her quirk from her exposed arm and throws it down on the path of the incoming villains, releasing a spill of the substance it contained that was apparently slippery enough to make him lose his footing and stumble uncontrollably. She takes advantage of it by twirling her body to deliver a powerful swing to the head that left him unconscious. It's for your own safety, Midoriya. We can't act recklessly at a time like this. Yaoyorozu adds her argument in the heat of the battle. Given the relationship between the two, hearing it from her had a much deeper impact. It didn't escape his mind the relevance of what they both meant with their words. This was a life-and-death situation. They have to be realistic to make it through it, so it can't be ignored that he doesn't have us to contribute as they do. No combat experience, and of course no quirk. He doesn't even have any equipment to help him out, the one thing he was learning to rely on when he would face villains. Icarus was still blocked of, and Yorozu was occupied with her battle to create anything complex for him. A lifetime of paying the price for being powerless, this was a new height for him. It's why that outside of their lives on the line, the bigger concern for him is how Yorozu might see him after this, his first chance at a friend in over a decade. Earlier today, she found out about his quirkless status, and by some miracle still saw him in the same light as before, but seeing this side of him for herself could be enough of a reason to change her mind. I don't want to get in their way, but I can't stand by doing nothing. Whatever his dismay at the moment, it didn't suppress the urge to still try and do something, however small that may be. They both have powerful quirks. Maybe if I think of something, we get out of this situation, a non-lethal way to take out the villains all at once. He observes the situation more to assess on a solution. Kyoko was unleashing blasts of sound from both of her support gears at a row of villains, while Ierozu displayed more of her combat skills with her staff, as well as throwing in various items she utilizes after creating, such as a net to capture a villain in the air. Jiro's sonic blasts are our best offense, but it looks like her support gear can only cover up to 2 directions. Ierozu I'm more familiar with and will probably be obvious solution. What would the best thing to make though? That's when his open wider in realization. The result of his thinking brought up a memory. In the time between their first and second meeting, when they had plenty of conversations over the phone, one subject was on a particular way to use the creation quirk, and it might just be the answer here. Ierozu, remember when we talked about pro heroes whose quirks you could imitate, like Midnight? Izuku brings it up to her. It takes no time for Ierozu to remember the same thing he did, and catch in his meaning right away. I do. Her quirk activates. The light it emulates on her skin covers the lower part of her head, and from it a new creation emerges, a gas mask. 2 spots of light emulate from her sides and she pulls out 2 duplicates of the same item. Put these on. She tosses them to Jiro and Midoriya. Both drop their weapons and immediately put their masks on. Ierozu removes her jacket and leaves it on the ground. Then a thick gas was coming from all around her upper body, enveloping the 3 students and concealing their presence entirely. The villains were naturally cautious to this action. What's that, a smoke screen? She gave them gas masks, idiot. It's meant to do something if we get caught in it. So we keep our distance. Not like it's spreading all that fast anyway. It was true that while the gas was spreading, it was mostly concentrated to a limited area, and the speed of its expansion wasn't enough to impact the enemy. Everyone outside the gas made sure to avoid it. Their focus on that, however, left them vulnerable to a surprise attack from within the obscuring element, in the form of another sonic blast. It didn't feel as strong as before, but the villains caught in it still braced themselves, and all of a sudden, they found that they were now surrounded by the gas. More sonic blasts were fired in multiple directions, each one causing the gas to follow and cover more area in an instant until the level everyone stood on was enveloped entirely. Within a few seconds, every villain was coughing from its effect and eventually laid down unconscious. My name is Izuku Midoriya. A teenage boy was in the process of recording a live video for a message he intends to deliver to the public. He had fluffy dark green hair, eyes with the same green color, and a freckled face. Not much more of him could be seen in the video besides a gray hoodie he was wearing, and that the expression on his face was tired and stoic. It looked as though he was sitting down with his back against a wall, in a darkened setting that provides no indications to his location or surroundings. People recognize me as the UA student that won the first-year sports festival a few weeks ago. Something that should sound spectacular, if not for all things that came after. He starts off with a brief introduction. The way he says the last few words sounded like regret in his voice. My last battle was with Katsuki Bakugo, the hero student with the explosion quirk that came in second. I know him as a childhood friend, which brought a lot of arguing during our fight that revealed some things I was afraid would come out. In particular, was the fact about me being quirkless. Reminding himself of it by saying it out loud was a bit difficult, so he takes a few moments silence before continuing. My life since discovering that was everything that's expected to be because of it. In my case, the worst of it came from Bakugo. To him, being quirkless meant being worthless, and he would make sure I would always know it, even if he had to be violent, going as far as to use his quirk on me. I always kept quiet about what he did for a number of reasons. Mainly because very few people would side with me over him. Teachers at our middle school were no exception. Protection a star student everyone knew was meant to become a hero. His expression changed to a slight amusement after letting out one chuckle. To be honest, I'm more guilty of that than anyone. I always admired his quirk, his talent, and his potential to become a great hero. Despite what I had to endure from him, I didn't want to jeopardize that by making him look bad in any way. He shifts into a more serious tone after that statement. But I was ready to set it all aside when it came to our fight, because becoming a hero was just as much my dream to follow as it was his. A dream I was mocked for thinking it could ever be possible, but I was fortunate enough to find more people willing to believe in me and help me to achieve it. Entering UA through the support course was a part of that help. A way to develop skills necessary for a quirkless hero, like building the equipment I used throughout the sports festival, with the intention of getting recommended for the transfer exam into the hero course afterwards. 𝗵𝘃𝗲 was more offended than ever that I was in it for that reason, implying that I was showing how better I was than him. He didn't hold anything back, but for once in my life, I came prepared and stood my ground. He turns his head upwards. I allowed myself to stand with pride after I did the impossible and overcame him. I looked forward with hope that I was all the closer to my goal, to the change in my life I was looking to put the past I lived in quirkless discrimination behind. He then looks down with a somber look. I should have known better than to not expected some backlash. First, with the media's focus on the hero student's loss rather than the victory of a quirkless nobody. Easier to believe the top hero school falling short when they were attacked by a group of villains not long before. It has to be if that same school has stooped into wanting to turn the quirkless into heroes. That was just the beginning. The first day back at UA, I was meet with the homeroom teacher for Class 1A. The way he waited to bring nervous the entire time, because he was the one who got to decide if I was eligible for the transfer exam. I'm sure you can guess how that turned out. Some more time passes between statements. He spent the next several minutes discussing his reasoning, but it was clear what it all came down to. He admitted as much for the sake of being straightforward. He also told me why I should stick with the path towards the support industry that I was already on and sure to be successful in, rather than to risk my life needlessly for what will always a danger for someone without a quirk. Support gears of any kind are no substitution. I couldn't do anything to change his mind. I was heartbroken to know that I won't get my chance for the hero course. Only thing I could do was consider what he said about a career in support. I had that at least to still be a part of heroics. And that was my mistake in thinking the support industry would be any different. Not everyone in the support course receives offers for internships after the sports festival, but winning it with support gears alone was almost guaranteed to bring you the highest number. Unless, that also isn't worth the time for a quirkless. A much longer pause passes by, giving him time to express some more emotion in reliving events transpired, ending to a mix of stoic and somber. Any hope I've held on to for a better future was gone after that. Society is just too used to the idea that having no quirk is the same as having no real value. It's too convenient for the majority who don't have to suffer what I suffer to hold on to this way of thinking as common sense. Finding out otherwise means they were never special if the lowliest amongst them could achieve greatness. What he expressed after his say was a look of defeat. I did have people in my life that thought differently of me. Influential people, too, that provided their assistance, like I mentioned earlier, who reassured me they were not going to leave me where I was. I am grateful to them, but if I rely on them at this point, then they become the whole reason I ended up anywhere, and my own efforts would lose their meaning. I can't accept that. No one would have me for me. More importantly, I can't let myself be any more of a burden than I am to those who care for me and who I care for. Which begs the question, what now? What could I possibly do now to avoid a life of further discrimination where I might live and die in poverty? I focus on the answer, and there are only two options I can see in front of me, neither of which I thought I'd ever consider. My first thought was to somehow fight for the changes society denied, except then I'd become an enemy of the very thing I aspire towards. I've seen too many occasions of people fighting for their own beliefs and end up being associated with villainy, if they don't end up as actual villains. A recent example can be seen in the form of Stain, the hero killer. He was hesitant to speak any further but found the will for it. I'm left with the other option. I've always tried to keep this one out of my mind. But now, I can't think of any more reason to do that. Nothing that can convince me it isn't for the best. Izuku leans in towards the camera as he reaches to grab hold of an object. What that was revealed to be when he brings it into view of his recording would put most of his viewers in complete shock for what's to follow. A handgun. An individual wakes up in a jolt from a sound akin to a gunshot. He was a slender man in all black, from the eyes and messy shoulder-length hair, to the civilian attire consisting of a zipped-up jacket, cargo pants, and boots. A brief look at his surrounding reveals the interior of a train cart he was sitting in, where sleep had took him on the transit to then allow a nightmare to unfold in his head. Too much to ask for a peaceful rest when the opportunity provides it. Just my luck. His elbow presses on a knee so that his forehead may weigh down on his palm. Not that I'm in any position to complain tonight. The same night that marks 4 years since the tragic lose of Izuku Midoriya, a student of the school he worked at. Not one of his own, and when it came to it, he made sure it stayed that way, whether or not he saw it as a means of protecting his life. If only he wasn't so arrogant as to think there was going to be people to pick him up where he left him. Those that tried to make it right were too late, and the end result was everything he feared was going to happen in the most unexpected way. He's had to live with it from then on. The one thing he dedicated his career into preventing from ever occurring, the senseless waste of a student's life. His profession has required him to move on from the lives that couldn't be saved, and he has, but some occasions made all the guilt not as easy to suppress as others, like the night of the tragedy itself. Arriving at Itosu Station, the overhead speaker announces his destination was approaching, reminding him why he was on the train, begrudgingly putting his sorrows at the back of his head. I'll sulk over Midoriya tomorrow. I have work to do. The black-clad man walks out of the train station. As soon as he does, he pulls out his phone and opens up an app he recently downloaded. It was designed to bring him to an exclusive event going on in Hosu, featuring a countdown to the start of it, and now that he was in the city, provided a GPS to the location. Seeing as he had time and short enough of a distance, he walks towards it. Along the way, he passes by some sites reminiscent of the city's own past hardships from when heroes had to fend off a large-scale attack from the genetic monstrosities created by the League of Villains, while on their initial pursuit for the hero killer. They were successful on both fronts, but it's left a mark on the city that is sure not to be forgotten for a long time. His journey brought him to an abandoned factory in the city's industrial zone. When he gets to a certain distance of the building, the app shows him where to find the entrance on a side of it that had some element of discretion. A hidden door opened itself as he unknowingly approached it, taking it as a sign to just walk right in. In another building across from the factory, someone was peeking from a window to see Aizawa walking in. Eraserhead has entered the building. That's the last of them, he announces on a communication device. Somewhere in the area was a large vehicle parked in a position that was out of sight from the factory. Inside of it was a tactical team of law enforcers. Copy that. The police captain amongst them responds. He then makes an announcement to the other men, and everyone listening on their communication channel. Everyone listen up. The initial strike team are all in place. Remember, priority 1 is to avoid civilian casualties should they be forced to act before the building is clear of them. Team 1 goes in to provide support, while Team 2 remains outside to prevent any escape attempts, as well as provide crowd control should the need arise. Manual here. Understood. This is native. Read you loud and clear. The captain has received a response from all of the other units surrounding the area, consisting of more laws enforcers and local heroes assigned to the task. He turns to a computer screen to see the countdown for a live video feed of the event, from a public website belonging to the ones who organized the whole thing. Despite any attempts to remove it from public access, it has only proven to be both untouchable and untraceable in the digital world. All of a sudden, a noise was emitting from his communication device, making him look back towards it with confusion. It then became apparent that it was coming from all of the devices everyone had on them. It got everyone wondering what was going on. What's up with the radio? Is it a bug or something? The captain was the first to realize that given who they were facing, this couldn't be anything good. We've been compromised. By the time he shouts it though, the noise was having an effect on everyone hearing it. They felt a sensation of fading consciousness, which they eventually succumbed to. A feminine figure was coming out from a state of invisibility outside of the vehicle, revealing someone dressed in a white full-body outfit, with a hood over a high-tech helmet that has a red visor. On the individual's left breast was a symbol depicted in black, in the shape of a right hand on its backside, with the left half of it looking like its skeletal structure was exposed, only that it appeared to be more mechanical in design. The figure was looking at the vehicle through a digital display produced by the helmet. It includes an outline of the people inside, almost as if they could be seen through walls, as well as a feature that showed their vital readings to determine that they were all unconscious. She looks around to see the outlines of the other law enforcers and pro-heroes from greater distances, seeing that they ended up in the same state. A successful strike. Everyone outside has been put down, boss. She states out loud, with a voice that was made to sound mechanical. A group of people were gathered in a dark, large spaced room. The only sources of light were from the eyes of each of their mechanical helmets, as well as from a holographic screen projected in midair, showing a camera feed of the gathered audience. One of them was standing in front of it, looking at a select few amongst the rest that the image had focused on. Good work, Echo. Now if you don't mind with the next step. He instructs her further, revealing a mechanized voice of his own. Already on it. No one on the other side is gonna suspect a thing. She responds over their own channel. So much for their backup. These 6 are in for a rude awakening. Another one of them states while also looking at the feed from just behind the one in front. True, but we should be thanking them. Their presence will help to elevate our success tonight. The latter kept his gaze focused on one of the people of interest on the image, who was also the last to arrive. Eraserhead had integrated with the crowd he finds inside the factory. He expected there to be one, but seeing this many people was concerning for the mission. There was a stage at one end of the building that everyone was facing. It had a banner on each side with the half-exposed hand that's been advertised as the symbol of those that are orchestrating the whole thing. Above the stage was a holographic countdown to the start of the event. Some of the conversations he couldn't help overheard gave confirmation to a suspicion he's had. As I thought, they choose Hosu to capitalize on nostalgia for Stain's influence. People still remember him as some champion against an imperfect system we live in. This new threat is using that to put himself in the same light, and it helps that he's not a murder-driven maniac. But what about the timing? Did he choose this night specifically because of... The thought of the tragedy he has to contend with in his mind brought back the feelings he tried to hold down, and the knowledge that a criminal might be using it for his own benefit added new feelings of disdain. If he plans to take advantage of his memory, I will make him regret it. He only had a few seconds left to ponder on it before the timer over the stage reaches 0. Immediately the lights go off. The audience was taken back by the darkness. Then their attention was drawn to the lights coming on over the stage, where a row of individuals could be seen slowly emerging from beneath. Their attires each had a unique appearances, with their own colors and designs, but had some similarities between them, like how they covered their whole bodies, concealing their identities, while also having some pieces that looked to be mechanical. One thing that stood out for Aizawa was the height for some of them, bringing up curiosity for their age. The middle figure was the most interesting out of all of them, the one believed to be the leader of the group. His costume is a black jumpsuit with green linings. It had some metallic components that consisted of a full facial helmet with glowing eyes, gauntlets, boots, shoulder pads, and a belt that had a half cape underneath it covering the back of his legs, as well as their symbol placed on the middle point. The audience began to cheer loudly upon their appearance. The leader moves up front, then in a stunning display, a giant holographic duplicate of his upper body comes to light above him. Earning him more cheers, he attempts to calm by raising his arm, his hologram mirroring his action. The cheering eventually dies down, and he begins with his opening statement. I am the cyber vigilante, Augment, and I'm there to say that men are not created equally. His mechanical voice filled the room. In this world, there cannot be victors without the vanquished, the strong without the weak, the top that prospers without the bottom that struggles. We as a society have always lived with this unavoidable truth, yet have sought to achieve a sense of equality in some form or another. How we defined that, however, was forever changed along with the rest of the world, after something too big for it to not later revolve around the existence of quirks. This prompted everyone to talk amongst themselves to that reveal. Make no mistake, he continues. The audience lets him speak further. Quirks are indeed a gift to the world and should be seen as such, but it is not a gift without fault. First was at the dawn of their discovery, leading to a chaotic period of change. People at the time were far from fully welcoming a race of superpowered humans, and it didn't help that a great deal of them did use their powers for criminal purposes. Then came those who used their powers to fight back and dedicate themselves into restoring law and order back into the world, creating the pro heroes worshipped today. Many heroes have lived up to the ideals expected of them, but in the end, people have always held more interest in action and the ability to carry it. And so, pro heroes became associated with quirks considered to be powerful and flashy, which became a standard to look up with high regard. A standard made to be determined from birth alone. The world resulting from that easily dictates one's place in it by what could basically be described as a genetic lottery, to be either blessed or condemned over the quirks they have. The audience shouts out aggressively in agreement, meaning that there are those who are much closer to having strong and flashy quirks than others, and of course, find it justifiable to look down on all the rest. The ones with quirks deemed as weak and useless. Quirks with heteromorphic traits that give inhuman, monstrous appearances. Quirks of a certain nature too villainous to be seen any different. Worse still, are the ones seen as the most worthless in society's eyes, for their complete lack of a quirk. The shouting intensifies. Whichever of these we may fall under, we are told that this is the reality of the world we live in and endure. Not like the powerless can do anything about it, I'm sure the powerful commonly believe. More loud noise for the facts stated. Besides, if they're ever pushed into becoming a big enough threat, there's always the pro heroes to put them in their place, protecting lives regardless of quirks. But when it comes to fighting for better ones, it's a disruption to the public order they will always protect first. What they offer in return are empty words of sympathy for our unjust hardships, and then leave us to our fates until we're in need saving again, or to be neutralized. While the audience continue to react to every sentence while screaming cheers, Eraserhead is focused on assessing the target, his motivations, and his ability to persuade large number of people to think like him. A combination that is sure to cause more trouble than he already has. It's also a reality that for some, it gets to a point where silent conformity is no longer an option, even with the heroes as an obstacle. Needless to say, I'm someone already past that point. A chance to learn more about Target himself piqued the hero's interest. To get to where I am now, I had to find my own means of strength for the battles ahead. My path brought me to the obvious solution of having support gear as a substitute for a quirk. Despite all the doubt I faced along the way, I soon realized the true potential in technology to become a power in and of itself. One that exceeds quirks in the ways of control, growth, adaptability, and accessibility beyond genetics. More cheers on the idea that this was something not as limiting to posses as quirks are. For Eraserhead, however, that story sounded a little too familiar for his liking. In time, I developed a unique method to advance technology towards that level, and in the process of acquiring the necessary tools, I focused on one design in particular to make it a power I can say is as much a part of me as quirks are to mankind. Augment lifts both arms in front of him. The metal gauntlets appear to have turned into a liquid state that allowed them to retract within the open slits on his palms, leaving his forearms exposed. Liquid metal protrudes from one palm, taking a shape then forming a complex design before reverting to a solid state. The result was the creation of a drone-like device. It activates and flies in the air, spinning in circles above the audience for a slight spectacle. It then flies back towards the vigilante with speed, only to be met with a swinging blade of 𝐒𝐭𝐻𝐻 sword in his hand and cut in half. The two pieces of the drone land behind him. Both of them liquefy into puddles that move to his sides. The sword also liquefies and retracts back into his palm. Then he bends a knee to place both hands on the puddles to produce more liquid metal as he rose up. The two liquid bodies of metal took on humanoid shapes and formed into robots that look like silver duplicates of himself. He performs some hand gestures as commands for the robots and they follow, both sliding away to the sides, produce wings on their backs and rise up in the air, flying above with spectacular feats of maneuvering that succeed in raising some awe in the audience. The robots fly back to their creator, landing on foot on each hand, showing that he could hold them up and balanced with ease, until they turn back into liquid state and shrink down to form back into the gauntlets surrounding his arms. Everyone gave their applause to that small show. Becoming a vigilante afterwards, comparing my technological might with the quirks of the pro heroes in their work, was all to show the world there was now an equalizer to make up where quirks have denied. Eventually, I would turn that into a standard of my own to replace the current one. No more motivation for quirk-based discrimination, more cheering to his statement. But even with my newfound advancements, I could only get so far alone, so I found others to join the cause. The other vigilantes on stage walked up to his sides. Together, we demonstrate the possibilities technology can bring, not just against quirks, but also alongside them. Each of them displays their own use of the adaptable machinery provided to them, creating one form of gadgetry or another, earning praises for themselves. I stand before you tonight to announce that we are prepared to take our numbers a lot further, from a team of vigilantes to an entire organization spanning our influence through the country. We seek any and all like-minded individuals willing to take part in what Japan will come to know as the Cyber Front. People inside the building were ecstatic to receive the news. Eraserhead kept his glare focused on the head vigilante. What he just heard was confirming to his biggest fear tonight. This was a recruiting campaign, creating opportunities for people to become outlaws by someone who's effective in stirring them to take it. There is no denying, however, that what I offer will be a life outside the law. The heroes, the HPSC, the government, will not waste a single second to mark everything we do as vigilantism. Villainy even when they're desperate enough, whatever to better justify the need to silence and suppress us. Their cheering had quickly turned to shouts disapproval upon that statement. Try as they might, though, I don't intend to make it that simple for them. Unlike whatever the heroes had dealt with before, our battle will be to sway public opinion to our favor until it's enough to meet a specific end goal. Eliminating the heroes by replacing them. Eraserhead was shocked by that revelation. It lines up with their activities thus far, but he didn't expect this to be a plan for a group that has played it too logical to think they'd aim for an ambitious goal as this. A fantastic idea, I admit. But like I said earlier, people are more interested in action and the ability to carry it. Why wouldn't the people prefer to put their trust in something that clearly outperforms the heroes? You've seen what we've accomplished already as a team. Imagine the results from a whole army. Doing just that had a very positive response. Not to mention that in their place, our role won't be limited in service to society, but it's in embetterment as well. The technology that will surpass quirks will then fix one of the downsides to society by advancing it to the human progress lost for hundreds of years in the same chaos caused by quirks. We'd otherwise be taking interstellar holidays by now. Is that not all the more reason to go through with this? Everyone passionately agrees. Who amongst you wants that? Another passionate agreement. Who is willing to make it happen? This brought about the longest session for the audience to pour out their praise for the offer to make a difference in the grandiose. I am glad to hear it. Details on your participation will be posted on a later time. I would now like to provide a special presentation before we conclude tonight's event. If everyone will look up, they all comply with that simple request, to find that the ceiling above was vanishing to reveal the night sky. A complete visual of the rooftop. One of the ideal ways to witness what I am about to do with the help of some volunteers from the audience. His way of saying that particular word almost sounded like a hint to those who are referred by it. For Eraserhead, it was enough to put his brain on full alert. Before he could react, though, he feels a sensation from the lower parts of his legs, and looking down showed him they were caught by metal braces originating from the ground. Within seconds of that, the piece of the floor directly beneath him suddenly shots up in air, levitating him in such a speed that impedes any ability to resist. It was after passing the level of where the ceiling once was that the device halts its ascent and lets go of him, before he would fall from the elevated height, only to land without re-entering the building. Confused as to how he was standing on air, the device that brought him there dissolved into the empty space beneath his feet, suggesting there was still a solid platform he was standing on to see the audience below. The next thing of note was that he wasn't alone. 5 others were on top of the building with him, wearing similar style clothing meant to avoid attention, just as surprised to have been brought there as he was. It was absolutely no coincidence each of them were exactly the 5 he knew would be here for the same reason he was. No denying at this point their cover was blown. Crap, they're on to us. One of the 2 youngest exclaims in panic. He had blonde hair with black streak on its sides. We're standing on metal, but my quirk isn't doing anything to it. Another with a bald head was pointing his arms downwards in an effort that was to no avail. A third member had a metal headpiece that was previously hidden by the hat he wore over it, with a retractable visor lowered to his eyes. He walks towards the bald-headed teammate. Polar Force, can you direct your quirk to the towers surrounding us? He points to the mechanical towers standing at each corner. The pro hero complied with the request and attempted his quirk to one of these towers, with no alteration to the result. Same thing. It's all resistant to magnetism. Damn it. They're generating fields of energy all around, so we're trapped up here and I can't gain any control of them either. This is Aizawa. The enemy knows we're here. Eraserhead taps on his earpiece to alert the reinforcement. Too many seconds pass without hearing anything back. Do you copy? Is anyone listening? By instinct, he turns to look out at where the police and other heroes were stationed. No good. The hero with the visor walks up to Eraserhead's side. His eyewear allowed him to see at a large distance one of the outside members on the ground. I can see some of our backup lying unconscious. Looks like they got to them first. And that only took one of us. A voice draws all the heroes to the direction it came from. Standing in the middle of all of them was the head vigilante, in an open spot where they should have noticed him being there already, or at least make his way towards. Yet none of them did. Eraserhead, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗏 𝗃𝗏, Charge Bolt, Polar Force, Mind Blank. Augment announces each of their hero names accurately, adding more fuel to Eraserhead frustration on how much the enemy was ahead of them. Pro heroes that currently make up an advanced team for an operation to my capture. You 6 were chosen specifically for your quirks, half of them being useful for capture, while the other half exploit weaknesses against technology. Not that the former has had any success so far. Isn't that right, Polar Force 𝗃𝗏? He openly mocks the 2 heroes whose quirks have already failed to either bend or control the tech in his possession. Their irritated expression was the response returned. That why you let us get this far since you clearly saw us coming? A chance to show of your tech some more? The question came from the other of the 2 heroes who is more new to the line of work. He stands out for his messy indigo hair and same-colored eyes that are part of the tired appearance that could be comparable to Eraserhead's. Indeed, which means I know better than to speak with my own voice mind blank. Would want to fall to your mind control now, would I? The vigilante counters. The hero was taken back by his quirk's failure to do exactly that, evident by the enemy having spoken a full sentence. Not to worry. You'll get what you came here for, just under my terms instead of yours. But first, if any of you have opinions you'd like to express, now is the time. He offers them. You need to stop this. Eraserhead states firmly. This got the vigilante to turn his head towards him, so he explains further. Whatever you went through, whatever idea you think will solve everything, all you're doing is manipulating people into risking their lives to end up on the wrong side of the law, all to meet a personal end you're hell-bent to see happen. The world is irrational and unfair to many because of quirks, but there are more rational ways to fight the problem than this plan of yours. It's not worth it to put lives on the line like this. Don't you think your argument is a little one-sided? I seem to recall you being a teacher of heroics, so I shouldn't have to tell you about a certain history proving otherwise. Everything I said about my plan has already happened before and worked out for the best. Augment retaliates. That was different. Things aren't as bad as they were back then to justify your extreme actions. Eraserhead argues. Aren't they? At that time, ordinary citizens took matters in their own hands when crime became too much to rely on governments to handle alone. These people were the vigilantes that inspired all governments to make the most of the crime fighters, turning them into the original pro-heroes. You wouldn't be here tonight to stand against me if not for that. My plan is in essence a second coming of the vigilantly era, for the purpose of an upgrade to what resulted from the last one. The only difference I see here is where the oppression comes from to provoke this necessary movement, this time being the unjust hardships of today's world. The voice of the audience below gave their support for the vigilante's words, much to Eraserhead's displeasure to hear. Even if everything you've said is true, no hero is going to stand aside and let you have your way. We're certainly not backing down. The last one to say anything was the most well-known of the pro-heroes present. His attire left only the upper half of his head exposed, revealing red hair that was leaf-like and skin that was a shade of brown from a mutation of his quirk. I'd expect no less from a hero in the top 10. I just hope your title isn't cause for overconfidence or your superior number. Do you really think your plan will work? Mind Blank inquires. This isn't another shot with my quirk. I'm asking for real. He clarifies to get an answer. I would think the results of my actions up to now speak for themselves. But if that's not enough, well... His arms drop to his sides. This night should make things loud and clear. The heroes took his meaning for what it was. The time for talk is over.